Every 37 seconds, someone is arrested for possession of marijuana. Since 2010, state and local police have arrested an estimated 7.3 million Americans for violating marijuana laws, over half of all drug arrests. Black people are 4 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana laws than white people. States waste $3.7 billion enforcing marijuana laws every year. Most of the people police are arresting aren't dealers, but rather people with small amounts of pot, just like me. I'm Gary Chambers, and I'm running for the U.S. Senate, and I approve this message.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Green Rush Live, our regular Friday afternoon talk show that talks about the business of cannabis or the cannabis business. You just watched Gary Chambers' political ad, Gary Chambers Jr. political ad. He's running for the Senate seat in Louisiana, and he's running against a Republican named John Kennedy. Not to be confused with JFK, who's no longer with us, obviously, and obviously a very proud member of the Massachusetts world, which is where this show and this network resides. I'm Jimmy Young, the host of Green Rush Live, and also the founder of Pro Cannabis Media. Every third Friday on this program for, I think almost a year now. Morgan Fox has joined us from Washington, D.C. Morgan was the communications director for the NCIA, but he has played out his option, as they say in the sports world, and has been picked up and signed by the team from NORML, the National Organization for Reform of Marijuana Laws. So, Morgan, first of all, congratulations on your new gig.
Thank you very much. It's definitely a change of pace, but it's one that I felt was, a long time in coming, and being able to work directly with lawmakers as opposed to primarily crafting messaging for reporters and working on policy behind the scenes. It's a nice change of pace to be able to be in those rooms and be able to convince those lawmakers directly. Absolutely.
And of course, we just saw the advertisement that a Senate candidate named Gary Chambers Jr. out of Louisiana, Democrat, posted. It was this week because it kind of went off like wildfire. What was your reaction to it? I was very excited to hear a guy speak so openly about what cannabis and the role it has played in the community that has been most affected by the war on drugs.
Well, first of all, I thought it was a brilliantly produced ad. It focused on some of the most important issues with prohibition, which is the disproportionate enforcement of marijuana laws against people of color and low-income communities. It perfectly timed into the national arrest figures. I mean, across the board, it was just wonderful and very tastefully done. But I was even more excited about its reception. Couple of years ago, such an ad might have been laughed off as part of a professional political campaign. And now, just won the internet this week. And I think that it's also important to note that in response to that, the incumbent in the office that he's trying to get, Senator Kennedy, started to talk about his own cannabis policy or cannabis use. So bending the needle in any direction with an ad like that is just wonderful to see. I mean, we are really living in a different time than we were just a few short years ago.
Yeah, or even months ago, really, Morgan. I mean, it's changed a lot even during the pandemic. I think now that cannabis has been named an essential medicine in a lot of states, other than the one I'm in right now. But it has changed. One of the things about this particular ad that stuck with me, and as I was reading about the voting figures in the district that Republican Kennedy, Senator Kennedy, which sounds so weird for me to say that. I'm sorry, I'm from Massachusetts, and there was another Senator Kennedy that followed JFK that was hanging around the Senate for a long time too, the late Teddy Kennedy. But the point being, the percentage of voters in that district and how low the turnout was for the election of the now incumbent Senator Kennedy in the Senate. Did you happen to see those projections? Or actually, they were real figures, real facts about the turnout for voting during that last election.
Well, I didn't see the numbers directly, but typically in throughout the South, voter turnout is pretty bad, and particularly among communities of color, largely as sort of a holdout from Jim Crow, where people were threatened and even murdered for showing up to vote. And that sort of thing has a decades-long impact. And also, when you feel like your elected representatives aren't actually representing you, what's the point, right? So, I mean, I think that the purpose of this ad, as stated by Senate candidate Chambers and hopefully future Senator Chambers, in using it to drive voter turnout, I think was absolutely perfect and something that's greatly needed, particularly when we're talking about cannabis. We absolutely have to get the folks that are being most impacted by our drug laws to get out and vote in people that are going to change them.
And of course, we could get into the voting rights question that has been completely victimized by the bipartisan world that's down in Washington, D.C. And Morgan, I guess the first question to ask you is, it's almost hazardous duty to be a lobbyist in Washington, D.C. for cannabis, although these days, at least it's being more, you're being more receptive. People are more receptive, correct?
In general, yes. We don't get the door slammed in our face anymore. And really what I've been trying to relay to members of Congress, since I basically have started this new role and talking to members of Congress much more directly than I used to, is that, this train is leaving the station. And you don't want to be somebody who doesn't have a ticket and is trying to toss their polka dot bundle onto the boxcar at the end of the train. And you certainly don't want to be the guy that's pretending the train isn't coming and standing on the tracks.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that's another reason why in state governments, coast to coast around the United States and in places that are looking to reform, some of these reform initiatives are being introduced by Republican senators, state senators in their states. And the only thing that I'm encouraged by is, do they know the numbers of the U.S. senators? Because they should call them and explain to them why it's important to move forward.
Oh, they absolutely should. And you can definitely do that directly to your House and Senate representatives at NORML.org. But we're also seeing a lot more movement on the Republican side in Congress as well. That's clearly evident from the fact that David Joyce introduced basically a states' rights bill, and then Representative Mace introduced a descheduling bill. That was pretty solid, and I think could have a significant amount of bipartisan support if more comprehensive legislation like the MORE Act or eventually the CAOA, if we ever see what that looks like, it actually comes to pass, or is determined to not be able to pass because of partisan bickering. But look at all the recent polling. Pew and Gallup and Quinnipiac have all shown that Republicans are now in a majority support for ending prohibition. It's a slim majority, but it's growing. And that majority is much, much higher when you look at the younger age demographics and people that are going to be running the Republican Party in 5, 10, 15 years. So you can also just look at constituent polling. When you look at the fact that there's a majority support among basically across party lines for this issue, any politician that is trying to increase their chances of reelection should get wholeheartedly behind this issue. At the very least, it's not going to hurt them. It's going to give them a little bit of a bump in the polls come election day, no matter what party they're in. If they decide to be champions and leaders of this issue, it can actually increase their polling numbers and their chances for reelection much, much more. And I think that that's a message that we really need to be sending to politicians, both folks like me who are lobbyists and showing them the numbers, but also voters actually voting along these lines and making cannabis a priority issue.
You mentioned the CAO Act that is still simmering somewhere in the offices of Senator Chuck Schumer. Senator Cory Booker is another co-sponsor of that bill. Did you happen to get any reaction from him? Did you hear anything when he saw that ad? I'm guessing he embraced it. He was thrilled.
I haven't heard anything about his reaction from that. I would hope that he would be thrilled. At the same time, I hope that he would also.
Excuse me, but he's been waving the flag for injustice and expungement of past crimes in that news conference that was out there, and even to the point where he said, I don't want to just pass a safe banking act. I want people out of jail who have been incarcerated for possession crimes and certainly nonviolent cannabis crimes.
Yeah, well, we've discussed this before on this show. I completely agree that in a perfect world we should try to get everything passed at once, but the political reality is that that's not going to happen. The votes are just not there for comprehensive cannabis policy reform in the Senate. I am working very hard to make sure that they are, but the history of cannabis policy reform has been incrementalism. And the fact of the matter is that the Safe Banking Act and other incremental measures will help the people that have been disproportionately harmed by prohibition. They're not perfect. They could stand to be improved quite a bit, but we have to deal with the political reality of a bipartisan Senate that is really right on a razor's edge, and also deal with the reality that one, if not both chambers of Congress are going to switch to GOP control in the next midterms. So, I think that there are a lot of things that we can do to help promote the ideas that Senator Booker is focused on, and to make the incremental measures as strong as possible, given these political realities, as well as a lot of non-governmental things that we can do, such as like independent watchdog groups to make sure that banks are lending in a fair, non-discriminatory or non-predatory manner to cannabis businesses, and a number of other things that we can promote. I mean, there may be opportunities for us to be able to marginally improve the Safe Banking Act, but half of nothing is nothing, and our time is running short to be able to pass any sort of cannabis policy reform in this session of Congress.
Yeah, absolutely. The clock is ticking, and I'm not overly confident about what's going to happen in the midterms. But even at the states level, there was some movement this week in the state of Mississippi that seems to be getting closer and closer to getting a bill in front of that governor down there. Do you expect that to pass? And will Mississippi become the 37th medicinal marijuana state in the United States?
I do. And it looks as if the vote counts are such that they're pretty much veto proof. The governor has been objecting to the bill on a number of things, but primarily on the amount that cannabis patients are allowed to purchase. And it's a really ridiculous, arbitrary amount that's like less than an eighth. And there's absolutely no reason for that, but it seems to be a sticking point with that governor. And so, the fact that the legislature just decided, hey, we're going to push this through no matter what, and over your objections, I think is really profound and speaks to the elected officials in that state recognizing the suffering that their residents are under right now, and really responding in a way to help them find relief. It's not as good as the initiative that the citizens passed, and that should rightly be law by now, but it's a lot better than what the governor was trying to force the legislature into agreeing to. So I'm going to call that a win, and I think that we can almost certainly count on that being the 37th medical cannabis state.
Cool. That's a good number too. Incremental steps. I heard somebody talk about that, and I think that's what's going on in Mississippi. Can you tell us a little bit about your new gig? I mean, obviously dealing with the media versus dealing with politicians, Morgan, and you decided to go to the dealing with the politician side. The media will miss you because I thought you did a great job as director of communications for the NCIA. You always gave great quotes in any article. You were obviously on this program on a regular basis, and we appreciate that. Tell us about how your job focus and your day has changed since you went from the NCIA to NORML.
Well, first of all, I really appreciate the kind words, Jimmy. But when it comes down to it, whether you're dealing with reporters or members of Congress, it's all about relationships and sending the right message. So in a sense, that really hasn't changed. It's just the people that I'm talking to has changed. And I'll still be doing plenty of media interaction going forward. But really, I think that the big change is that I'm now primarily focused on the things that I used to talk about to members of the media, actually doing them now. There are definitely challenges, whereas reporters might stay on the cannabis beat for years, if not decades. There's a significant amount of turnover in congressional offices. So I might be talking to different people a month from now than I am today. I really was looking for a different challenge. I've been doing communications work for over a decade in support of ending cannabis prohibition, and I wanted to get my hands dirty in the seats of power. So I got the opportunity to do that, and I decided to take it.
Great. Well, congratulations on that. And I hope you got a huge raise. Okay. I have no idea because lobbyists, but I hope that at least you're more comfortable now than you were before.
I'm just more comfortable with the amount of time I get to spend with my kids. But wages are comparable. The one thing that is pretty much a commonality across all of cannabis policy reform is that it's massively underfunded. And, these are, I think a lot of people make the mistake that the folks that work at nonprofits like NCIA or NORML or NPP or DPA are raking in all sorts of dough. Not the case. The people that work for these organizations are working their butts off for way lower wages than what you see in pretty much any other nonprofit sphere or in any other industry. So I really encourage your listeners to donate to those organizations to increase their effectiveness and to make sure that the people that are putting their blood, sweat, and tears into this effort are fairly compensated for it and can live semi-comfortable lives, oftentimes in some of the most expensive cost of living cities in the world.
Absolutely. And did you get like a foot of snow down there recently?
It was pretty bad.
I know they don't do well with snow anywhere in the South. And I know DC, everything just shuts down. Am I right?
Oh, yeah, completely.
We don't do that in the Northeast.
Roads closed.
We don't do that in the Northeast. We're kind of used to that. It makes us hardy New Englanders and all that. And lastly, before you go, I do want to tease everybody out there who watches this show on a regular basis. This will be the end of the political talk for this show because we're going to be talking with growers of cannabis. And, it's one of the things that I've kind of I've shied away from it because I've got a black thumb. I'm afraid to kill a plant. A plant is a living thing. And that's a lot of responsibility. I already raised my son. Okay. I had help with that, but still I raised my son and, I don't need another living thing in my life that I feel responsible for. So I commend all the growers that are going to be on our show. We're actually starting a new program called Calling All Growers with Liz Grow from Grow House Media. She's out of Austin, Texas. And I just noticed that Austin, Texas is making some cannabis reforms as well. So that's what's ahead of us. Morgan, thank you again. You are welcome here, not only the third Friday of every month, but anytime you need the audience. Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And hopefully I can get onto that grower section as well. I'm about to put my tiny legal home grow into harvest, and hopefully it'll be fire.
Well, I guarantee you will learn something from the lineup that we have coming on this program over the next 90 minutes or so. So Morgan Fox, again, thank you so much for joining us here. We're going to take our 420 break, right on the nose, I might add. And that is, of course, when we play the song Shanty, which was my version of the Louis Pasteur statue outside the high school in San Rafael, California, where the Waldos created the 420 event. Don't go away. The Grow Show preview starts in just a few minutes.
Yeah, this is a tune that I wrote back in 19... I've forgotten. We had a saying in our old band, one of my first bands in 1966 or so. What are you going to do tonight? Oh, just, like every other night, just going to lay around the shanty and put a good buzz on. Gonna sit down in the kitchen, fix me something good to eat. Make my head a little high, make the whole day complete. Gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. Pass it to me, baby, pass it to me slow. We'll take time out to smile a little before you let her go. We're gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. you're on something. Go ahead. Rick Brodsky, everybody. Nothing to do and there's always room for more. Fill it, light it, shut up and close that door, baby. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Take it, okay. Prohibition never works, it's time to realize it. It grows in my backyard, it's time to legalize it. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. I'm going to sit down in my rented car. I'm going to jam it into drive. I'm going to head on out and play at WSCA with Sean. I'm glad I'm alive. We're going to lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on every night and day. We're going to lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on.
Nice. It's Friday. Thank God. Thank God Jonathan Edwards is joining us live in the WSCA studios.
Pro-Cannabis Media Programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be.
I'm a fan.
That's Liz Grow, Pro-Cannabis Media's newest show host for a new show, Calling All Growers with Liz Grow. Liz is a High Times TV personality who'll be joining our talk show program starting in February.
I picture a company that stands the test of time.
Stopping at nothing to meet the people who are growing this plant generation after generation.
Calling All Growers will be more than just another interview and talk show, especially if you subscribe to the Calling All Growers workshop and webinar. That's 2 weeks after the live talk show on the same growing network, Pro-Cannabis Media and PCM TV.
This is a show about interviewing the top growers in the game. It's a platform where they can share tips, tricks, and secrets for those growers coming up. Cultivators are some of my favorite people in the world, and I can't wait to talk to some of these growers.
It all starts on Wednesday, February 9th, live at 8 p.m. Eastern on PCM TV, on Roku, Apple, and ProCannabisMedia.com. Subscription-only workshops 2 weeks later on the 23rd. Sign up today to hold your spot.
What's your favorite strain?
Free.
If you're a grower or interested in learning more, tune in or
You're missing out. Calling All Growers with Liz Grow.
You would think that it is. However, there's quite a bit of debate right now in the accounting industry when it relates to cannabis with this exact question. I'm part of a few different networking groups that are solely accountants for cannabis companies. And there's been quite a bit of back and forth in those communities and discussion regarding whether 280E, if it went away, if the administration legalized cannabis or took it off of Schedule 1, what would happen? And it could go either way right now. The debate is it could make the accountant's life much easier. That's what a lot of the inexperienced accountants are saying right now, it seems, whereas the accountants that have been in this industry for a while and have gone through the same thing that happened with hemp a few years ago are saying that will make lives more difficult, because when hemp became declassified a while back, the accounting became more complicated.
Pro Cannabis Media Programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be.
Difference is building a solution for that individual. Not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the costs low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
All right, welcome back to Green Rush Live for Friday afternoon. I'm Jimmy Young in the chair here today. If you're wondering where David Rabinovitz is, let's say that he is on assignment, but he'll be back at some point on the Green Rush Live. Don't fret. In the meantime, we've got a great show for you, especially if you are into growing cannabis. And I try to stay away from the growing part. I like the buying part. And all right, I'll admit, I like the consuming part too. But it's the growing part that I've always stayed away from. I just don't feel comfortable talking about it. So I decided to recruit an old friend that I met a few years back at the Cannex, was the Cannex show in 2019. Her name is Liz Grow from Austin, Texas. Hi, Liz.
Hi, Jimmy. Hi, everyone. I'm just so thrilled to be here. So thrilled to be announcing this collaboration, this partnership with Pro Cannabis Media and Calling All Growers. And I'm just excited to be part of the conversation, guys.
That is great. Let me introduce the three people that we have on with us for this half hour. One is a guy that was one of the first interviews I did for the old In the Weeds, which is still the new In the Weeds show, when I started that in 2018. And that is Ben Morgan-Dillon from Acadia Farms, which is in Rehoboth, Massachusetts. He's a facility consultant now. Ben, thank you so much for joining us.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here, Jimmy. It's always been nice sitting and talking with you, and it's never hurts to have new faces and old faces, James. Liz, it's a pleasure to make your acquaintance and meet you. I've heard wonderful things. And Michael, thanks for coming on.
Let's get to James first, because I'm going to give you credit, Ben, for delivering two people from probably the most recognized part of the United States when it comes to cannabis growing. And that would, of course, would be California and a certain triangle called the Emerald Triangle in that Humboldt area. And James Beurer, did I do it right?
Yeah. Hi, how's it going, guys?
Good.
Nice
How are
to
you?
meet everybody.
You're an
Super glad to be here.
organic cultivators. It is the name of your company. Tell us a little about where you are and your background.
So I'm actually a metal fabricator by trade, but I've been growing vegetables since I was 10. So like 26 years I've been growing vegetables in my garden. And, once cannabis went legal in Michigan, I started down that path and ended up down this crazy rabbit hole of living soil and regenerative agriculture. And now I live here in California, and I help manage and operate Sunnabis here in Humboldt County.
Sunnabis. Okay, I got it. And also on this panel is a friend, a new friend. We're really developing a bond with Michael Marinaro, who is the grower of Bada Bloom, which is an emerging growing company here in Massachusetts. So, Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, and it's nice to meet everyone on the show. And I'm happy to be here, and I love meeting great new people in the industry. And we're here. We're a social equity company in Tingsboro, Massachusetts. We're doing cultivation, product manufacturing, and soon hope to have some home delivery as well. And basically a little background about myself. I've been in the industry for quite a few years now, but it's really developed in the past 5 or 6 years. Once I stepped foot on some Humboldt soil, I went out with a friend. We drove across country, worked on some farms out there for some time, quite a few years. And I after having when I was younger, I grew cannabis, and going through some unfortunate events in my life, it stopped me from my growing sector. And, in the past 5 years after coming back from out West, it was just, I realized what I was really meant to do. And this is where we started this company. And it's been quite a ride here trying to get into the industry in Massachusetts. It's not easy by any means.
No, there's nothing easy about anything in this industry. Liz, I'm going to allow you, because I think you have the show notes in front of you, to ask the first question of our grow panel, and then call on one of these growers to answer that. Go ahead.
Fantastic. I mean, Bada Bing, Bada Bloom. Is that the full name of the company?
We're just Bada Bloom is our cultivation and product manufacturing, and our delivery is going to be Bada Vroom.
Oh my God.
Bada Vroom.
and hopefully soon down the line, our third company, once we have some psychedelic decriminalization in Massachusetts, but when that comes online, we can have Bada Shroom as well.
Ooh, there you go. And by the way, isn't this industry great about all the plays on words and the double meanings and everything? I think it's great. Go ahead, Liz.
It's amazing. Yeah. So I just wanted to ask Michael a little bit about your social equity journey in Massachusetts. I mean, it's a hot topic right now, and I'm hearing just mixed reviews from the industry.
Yeah. So I was accepted into the cohort 2 of the social equity program. And basically I went through all the program, did everything. And, we finally got our provisional license in November. So we were on, I think yesterday was the following agenda. There was no December agenda. So we made November. Basically, if we want to start in the beginning, in Massachusetts, so you need a host community agreement before you can apply for a license. So, okay. The hardest barrier truly is finding a property that's zoned correctly with the town. So now you can get that HCA.
Right.
So, we finally found a town after, years of searching and trying to get properties. And, we found the place and we're like, oh, this is zoned. And, then we go to the town and then we find out that we need a variance for the property because they had an old bylaw that, showed that there was an indoor-outdoor active recreational area within 500 feet of the facility. And it was actually a medical bylaw. It wasn't in the recreational bylaws, but they were still adhering to that bylaw. So we had to fight and get our variance. And, we explained why they should allow us to have this here, and they actually agreed. So then our next step was to go for our provisional license. And, This was, I think, February of 2020 is when we originally started that process. And then about a year later is when we got the HCA. And then from February to November is when we got our provisional.
Oh my God. What
it's been quite a ride. And in between this process, I mean, we're in our capital raise still right now. So we've raised about $1 million out of 5.9 million. And we secured our building. So Bada Bloom owns our asset of the building as well, which was a pretty big milestone for us to, it's so hard to find capital funding, and there's just so many barriers people want the location in the building, and going to ask people for funding, they're just, they want to own the property. And that's not what our company is a different model. We truly are about our workers and cannabis and treating people that are actually growing the plant in the facility, because it's all about your team, I mean,
right.
It's not just starting a company and hiring a bunch of minimum wage people and throwing them in there. That's not how cannabis is grown. That's how, we're all about our quality. We're soil grown, organic cannabis with, good LED technology lighting. I've been research and developing for the past 5-6 years now using this lighting company, and it's very, efficient. They're liquid cooled LEDs. And it's just, we just designed a facility. We're about 95% with our construction drawings right now. So we're almost there to close that up. And we're just getting the building closed off. It's a brand new, Butler building, about 13,200 square feet. And our canopy will be roughly around, 3,500, 3,600 square feet.
So I'm actually going to interrupt, and I'm going to go right to Ben Morgan-Dillon, who's a facility consultant. Now that you've heard Michael's description of what he's got going, what's your feeling? Is he on the right track?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's considering the right things right off the bat. I mean, efficiencies is the number one thing. Resources are a commodity. And at the end of the day, your profit margins are determined by your operational expenses. And so one of the best things that you can do is, have that mentality from the very start. I'm glad to hear that you're doing that in your initial designs. Glad to hear you've got the asset of your property. That's fantastic. And congratulations on your assets.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And James, out there, you don't really have to worry about host community agreements. Am I right? In Humboldt County, although the county does have some issues, right?
Yeah, it's actually quite a mess out here for farmers. The market's pretty collapsed and oversaturated. There isn't really the retail that there used to be. Yeah, it's pretty much a mass exodus or die off of legacy farmers that actually made this place what it is. So that's definitely one of the things I am sure Wendy will talk about at the conference, and when she comes on later. It's something that we actually just had our kids at a protest a couple of days ago about the Measure S tax, which is a cultivation tax that farmers pay. Unlike any other farmer, we pay for the right to actually grow on the land. So, when you grow a food crop like corn or something like that, the end consumer is paying a sales tax, and you're paying a tax on that transaction. But like in my company, when I build something, I don't pay taxes on materials. The end consumer pays that. Cannabis farmers get taxed on taxed on taxed. It's pretty crazy out here.
It's the injustices of this industry that piss me off the most and make me even more determined to make sure that we continue to share conversations like this with everybody. Liz, you've been around the growing community for a long time. What do you think is the biggest issue that they face?
Well, I wouldn't say a long time as compared to our panel. We'll just say that. So it's been almost 4 years.
I didn't want to date you. I'm not dating you.
Listen, let's just be real. I don't care if you date me, but
okay, all right.
Don't date my experience, because I certainly don't want to oversell. I'm the constant student. I got into the industry about close to 4 years ago from the media perspective. What I found is no one was really shining a light and presenting this industry as I saw it as beautiful and fascinating. And so ever since, I've just been in it. And so what I've seen are the injustices to farmers as the biggest obstacle to a quality product on the market today. Quality product meaning price point, solid COAs and testing. And I mean, I'm in Texas right now. Okay. So we're dreaming big and we're fighting for inches, right? But I've seen just across the nation farmers getting screwed over and over and over again by a government that wants to bleed this plant dry. And so what kind of rally was it, James? Can we learn more a little bit about the organization that maybe put the rally on, the protest?
Yeah, so the rally itself, I don't know the name of the organization. I forget it off the top of my head. Wendy would know. But we actually took our kids out of school to go there to be present, because we did the math, and if we want to do what we are planning on doing with the farm next year, it's going to cost us $28,000 just in Measure S tax, just for the right to farm. That's on top of all the license fees and water board fees and everything else you have to pay. That's 2 years of college education, and we have 5 kids. So it's a little extreme.
What's the age range, Jim?
12 to 6.
Wow. And you went through the pandemic with all these kids in the house too?
Yeah, well, actually, we're a blended family. It's kind of a crazy story. It's kind of like a modern cannabis love story. Organic Cultivators started as a Facebook group. So it's about 13,000 people, and we're focused on regenerative agriculture. It's how I met Wendy, and we started talking online and fell in love. And I have 3 kids, she has 2, and now I live here in California. And yeah, it's kind of crazy. We're having to have this whole discussion now because they're talking about, with vaccine mandates, what we're going to do with our kids next year in school. So it's definitely pretty interesting with the COVID and having 5 kids.
I have so much respect for you and Wendy right now, because one was enough for me. Okay, trust me, and it's just the way it worked, right? Anyway, but I do want to mention something, Liz. Did you see the story? Austin, Texas cannabis decriminalization is coming to the ballot box in May. I think that broke today. That's that's your hood, right?
That's my hood. Very, very, very exciting. Thank you for bringing that up, Jimmy. But I think the bigger issue is that we're kind of past that point where it should be decriminalized for having a little bit of pot. You know what I mean? I think it's that kind of news almost takes the focus away of really the big fight, which is getting this medicine to patients across Texas. We have to stop locking people up, and more cities are doing that. And so it's good. It's, in Austin, it's kind of decriminalized already. You know what I mean? So it's like, being in it, I'm very, very skeptical of anything that's not really moving the needle. I feel like it's a lot of lip service for a lot of years. So
I've heard, just by listening to the 3 of you, the word organic keeps coming up. I'm going to start with Ben, and I'm going to say, Ben, can you explain the difference between organic farming and non-organic farming, especially when it relates to the cannabis plant?
So I mean, there's a long and a short to that.
Make it short so the other people can have a chance.
The short of it is basically that if you're cultivating in an organic matter, specifically if you're going to try to be certified organic, then you have to exclusively utilize inputs that are certified by either somebody like OMRI or another verifying body that is able to actually trace back all of the ingredients in that product and determine whether or not they were organically sourced. And really, in the end, what that comes down to is, are you growing in a methodology that allows for the symbiosis of microbes and soil entities, the different actual mineral contents to mingle together to feed your plants? Or are you utilizing synthesized or otherwise ionized nutrients that are coming to you in a soluble or non-soluble form? And then you're using those to force feed your plants through chelation agents that force uptake into root systems by basically the exact same method as an organic, except that when it comes down to it, in an organic system, a plant chooses what it wants to feed on moment by moment, thousands of times a day, actually more like hundreds of thousands of times a day, where in a synthetic nutrient system or an ionized nutrient system, the chelation agents are actually mixed right in, and therefore it forces that uptake of nutrients at the exact time that you feed, or as long as that feed is in contact with the roots, rather than when the plant actually desires it. And it also sort of determines what the plant wants for it, rather than allowing the plant to actually determine what it needs at that growth cycle. based on cultivar or different stages.
Got it. I get that. So James, how important is organic farming out there in California?
So I guess the first thing I would say is organic is a huge trigger word. It means all kinds of different things to different people, and lots of money can get your product organically certified. We utilize natural farming, which is definitely a step beyond organic farming. Everything that we do goes towards the practice of regenerative agriculture. So we're trying to add back to the land. We've lost a third of our topsoil in the nation's corn belt, and there are practices that we've gotten away from that can help rebuild soil and add back to the health of our land. So that's organic. Certainly, organic food in stores is becoming more and more widely available, and in California, it's definitely the pusher. Everyone eats, everything here is organic, even the small town grocery store here. But yeah, we really are focused on natural farming and really thinking about where our inputs are coming from, trying to get away from the soluble nutrients that Ben was talking about, those chemical chelates, buying mostly bottles of water for our grows. We want to think about what we're doing, try to source inputs locally, and operate from a perspective that is healing to the land. And in our case, the inputs that we make, Ben is well aware, he uses the same farming methods. We can actually eat and take for human health. So it has a dual purpose.
Michael, I know I don't know the answer, but I do know that you have something to say about organic farming.
Well, I mean, Ben did an excellent job covering it. I don't know how much more you can talk about. I mean, but we're really, you feed the soil instead of feeding your plant. You're basically amending your soil, or eventually, Bada Bloom would like to do some no-till cultivation as well. I mean, that's truly where it's at. And, you see it in your terps after, and, you see it's in the quality of the flower after. I mean, it's hard to compare two different, they're two different worlds, not to say anything about any salt grows or, any type of growing methods, but, that's just what we do. And, I like the product that we have and what we want to offer to people. And truly, I mean, looking at from the top side of the plant and not the actual soil is also what you're spraying on that plant, because multiple people or multiple cultivators, they'll spray things that if they don't know what's in that bottle, you truly got to know what's inside of there. And in Massachusetts regulation, we have a 25B list here, but there's
very strict testing, very strict testing of the product in Massachusetts, right? Almost too strict. Am I right, Michael?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
It's I mean, the way I guess it should be, it's a little stringent, I mean, there's the testing facilities, there's some more coming online as well. There's only so many here, but I'm sure there'll be some different types of testing methods and as well. And I know it's been a barrier for a lot of different reasons in Massachusetts for testing facilities, but it's if you grow your cannabis organically and grow it the way that you should be growing it, you really shouldn't have issues with your testing.
I have a question. Can I ask a quick question of the group? What percentage do you think of maybe we'll just say overall commercial cannabis industry is growing organic, natural versus non?
Pick somebody, Liz.
Sorry, Ben.
There you go. Good job.
I mean, I'd say it really depends where in the market you look at. If you look at the nation as a whole, then I'd say we're maybe at 20% if we're lucky. But if you look at individual pockets, then you're going to have higher or lower ratios. I mean, you go to Humboldt and you're going to have a much higher ratio of organic and natural farmers than most other places. But if you go to Massachusetts right now, we've got, maybe 5%, 10%, I would say, of cultivations that are truly running organic cultivations or natural farming, regenerative farming. I believe actually right now there's really only one in Massachusetts that's running truly regeneratively, though I haven't been through their facility yet, but I've heard rumors and I'm looking forward to seeing it soon.
Hey, speaking of Massachusetts, James, you're involved with a conference at Sturbridge, am I right?
Yeah, we're putting on, actually Ben's one of the speakers there, and has helped facilitate a lot of the connections out there, being a farmer local to the area. And yeah, we're putting on a 3-day conference at the Sturbridge Host Hotel in Sturbridge, Massachusetts. There is a whole host of speakers, some really, really smart people like Dan Kittredge and Suzanne Wainwright. Wendy Kornberg, who's coming on shortly, is also one of the speakers. You can go to www.organiccultivators.net to find out all the information and get tickets and stuff. But yeah, the focus of the conference is going to be regenerative agriculture and growing cannabis, and as Michael said, feeding the soil and not the plant. With organic cultivators, that name is all encompassing. We try to get all growers involved. As far as we're concerned, if you're growing any plant, that's a good start. We're just trying to push everybody in the right direction. So yeah, it's going to be a really cool educational event. And then we also have, Ben mentioned the operation in Massachusetts, the one operation that's a natural farming operation. We're actually going to be doing an after hours event with them the last night, February 13th, where people who sign up, they'll be able to go there and tour their facility and see what they're doing there. And then they're also providing flower samples for a consumption event the first night, Friday night, which is the 11th. So we'll be at the Summit Lounge, hopefully, to do a consumption event there. And they're going to provide us with samples for everyone. So it's going to be fun.
I've consumed at the Summit Lounge, let's just say, in the past few years. Okay. Hey, can I ask how much is it to get into this conference? I mean, it's not free, I'm sure.
So the ticket's $350 for the 3 days. If you are a small farm or someone who is an equity recipient like Michael, you can go to the website. There's a page on the website. It's called Discount Tickets. Go there, fill out the form, and we'll give you a heavily discounted ticket. It's 50% off ticket. There's nothing you got to do other than just say, hey, we're a small farm and we'd like to come and whatever. So we know times are tough. There's not a lot of this stuff out there on the East Coast. We're trying to do as much as possible as small farmers ourselves to make this accessible to everyone and hope that we break even.
But I think that's the mantra of the entire industry, at least at the small business level, right? That first year, you just want to break even and then worry about the next. Ben, is this the first time that the East Coast is going to be able to reach into the Humboldt County area and Emerald Triangle and learn something at this conference?
Yeah, it's honestly a very, very special event. I've spent a lot of time over the past 15 years researching and learning about cannabis cultivation, and my whole world really changed about 6 years ago when I started following a large number of these speakers at the Regen conference, and it completely flipped the way I cultivated on its head. It changed my entire profession, and in a lot of ways, it's changed my life. So this is the first time that we're ever going to have all of these people together on the East Coast. They really are going to be putting together an exceptional event. It's a truly comprehensive 3-day educational conference. It's going to be very immersive and interactive with the conference's audience. We're going to be covering everything from soil biology through foundations work, stewardship, integrated pest management, conscientious breeding practices, natural farming, the philosophy of a lot of what we do and why we do it. And we're going to tie it all off with some really, really fantastic conversations about, the history of the people that are the heritage cultivators that have been out there living the outlaw lifestyle, the plight of the small farmers, and really bring it all together by showing you that you can do this regenerative cultivation, not just in a craft scale, but even at scale at a commercial level.
Hey, there's someone in the chat room named Wendy who says that Ben is wicked smart.
I was just thinking, Jesus, Ben. Killed it.
So I suppose this is why you asked me to do one of your speakers.
That's right. That's
Can I
right.
ask a quick question? Ben? You mentioned that, regenerative farming, you learned about it and then it changed you. Why aren't more farmers and cultivators taking up this practice? What are some of the barriers to it, I guess?
I think really the number one barrier is fear. And the fear comes from the fact that if you're a farmer, you've never had an easy day. You've never had an incredible year where you can just kick back and relax and not have to worry. So when you have something that your life depends on, and I think a lot of other industries can relate to this, but when you have something that your life depends on and you have a way that is working for you, you're afraid to change it. And a lot of the philosophy and a lot of the reality of what regenerative farming is, it goes so strongly against what's conventionally been taught, even though it's technically the oldest tech there is. But we've just gone so far past it now in a different direction that it seems so far away from what we're comfortable with, that for a lot of farmers to put their faith into these practices that are so divergent from the conventional agricultural methods, it's scary. And when your life depends on that and your livelihood depends on that and your children and family depend on that, it can be a really difficult thing to let that fear not determine what you're going to do, even when you're going to do actually will work out better for you and will allow you to have better yield with less work and an overall healthier, happier system. And it does feed into every aspect of your life like that.
And James,
what I would say,
hang on a second, because there's a question from the chat room about small farmers. Will they, from Vermont? I mean, everything in Vermont is small, but in this case, it's a small farmer. Do they have access to the discount, or is it strictly social equity, or
anybody?
Is it a by case basis?
Anybody who's a small farm, I don't care where you're at, just go fill out that form. There's a little, it's literally one question. It just, is there anything you think we should know? Just fill it out and, tell us what's up. There's an example on there. We're a small farm and 3 people would like to come. Like, it's really simple. We're trying to make it easy. I'm not trying to, I don't want to see your equity papers and all that crap. I'm not the county. We're just trying to get education out to people, and it costs money to get all these speakers to fly out to one spot and do a presentation. And given that we're a small farm, it's a lot for us with 5 kids to go, okay, we're going to put this on and cross our fingers and hope we can pay for it. And, but, we're looking so forward to, participating and being there to learn ourselves and be involved in the conversation. That's really key. And to add to what Ben was saying, it can be very scary to change everything that you're doing. And what I would say is pick a small part of your farm to practice these methodologies on and give it some time, and you'll see the change. For me personally, I'm very anti woo-woo. Things like biodynamic are kind of like a turnoff to me. But over the last 2 years of going down this natural farming path, the capacity that I have to love other human beings, including my children and my family, has grown because of these philosophies and these practices and what I have seen firsthand doing these practices. So it is in many ways life-changing, as Ben said.
Fantastic. And best of luck. And Michael, I know that you buy into all this, and are you going to try and show up at this conference?
I will. I am going to try and show up. I was just trying to look up the dates quick. It looks like it's February, does it say 11th to the 13th?
11th, 12th, and 13th. Yep.
Awesome. I would love to meet you guys both there. I'm going to do everything I can to make it.
It'd be a pleasure, man.
Awesome.
Not that this matters, but it is Super Bowl weekend. Anyway, because my team is not going to be there. They got eliminated last week. I think you know which my team is.
Yeah. Can you tell I don't watch sports?
That's okay. By the way, I will say that there's definitely, I'm starting to find a few sports fans in the fields in Massachusetts, but it is not a prerequisite at all, and growing is a sport unto itself because you're dealing with living things. And by the way, Ben, when you talked all that stuff right over my head, and I said, you know what, I'll never be able to grow anything, let alone a cannabis plant. We're going to take a break. We got 2 more great guests coming in. I want to thank Michael. It was great seeing you last night, and hold on to that substance that I was tasting last night, because that was really good. And James, great to meet you. We're definitely going to be covering this event in some capacity, just so you know. Ben, great. Thank you for everything you've done for us here. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Right. We're going to take a break. Liz is going to stick with us for the next hour. Don't go away. We've got more guests coming on the Green Rush Grow Show. Don't go away.
You would think that it is. However, there's quite a bit of debate right now in the accounting industry when it relates to cannabis with this exact question. I'm part of a few different networking groups that are solely accountants for cannabis companies. And there's been quite a bit of back and forth in those communities and discussion regarding whether 280E, if it went away, if the administration legalized cannabis or took it off of Schedule 1, what would happen? And it could go either way right now. The debate is it could make the accountant's life much easier. That's what a lot of the inexperienced accountants are saying right now, it seems. Whereas the accountants that have been in this industry for a while and have gone through the same thing that happened with hemp a few years ago are saying that it actually will make lives more difficult, because when hemp became declassified a while back, the accounting became more complicated.
I'm a fan. That's Liz Grow, Pro Cannabis Media's newest show host for a new show, Calling All Growers with Liz Grow. Liz is a High Times TV personality who'll be joining our talk show program starting in February.
I picture a company that stands the test of time.
Stopping at nothing to meet the people who are growing this plant generation after generation.
Calling All Growers will be more than just another interview and talk show, especially if you subscribe to the Calling All Growers workshop and webinar. That's 2 weeks after the live talk show on the same growing network, Pro Cannabis Media and PCM TV.
This is a show about interviewing the top growers in the game. It's a platform where they can share tips, tricks, and secrets for those growers coming up. Cultivators are some of my favorite people in the world, and I can't wait to talk to some of these growers.
It all starts on Wednesday, February 9th, live at 8 p.m. Eastern on PCM TV, on Roku, Apple, and ProCannabisMedia.com. Subscription-only workshops 2 weeks later on the 23rd. Sign up today to hold your spot.
What's your favorite strain?
Free. If you're a grower or interested in learning more, tune in or...
You're missing out. Calling All Growers with Liz Grow.
Pro Cannabis Media Programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Pro Cannabis Media Green Rush Live show on this fine Friday afternoon. We've got a great second half lined up. I'm so excited. We're going to be talking with Mo Smyth, RN. She is a cannabis educator, and we're just going to dive right in. Mo, so great to meet you. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So we were just kind of chatting during the break a little bit about what you do and really how you contribute, I think, to the cannabis ecosystem. So can you talk to me a little bit about how you work with patients and maybe educate doctors?
Sure. Yeah, so I worked in the regular nursing field for about 18 years before I was sort of encouraged to look into cannabis by my adult son. So I did, and mostly he was at that point thinking of it as a commodity. So like coffee, right? Because what kind of commodity has come out on the world in the recent years? Like not that many, right?
Right.
And this is going to be a global revolution, and it's going to revolutionize medicine. And that's what I learned as I got more and more into studying the plant.
Oh, okay. So you came about it from just maybe from like the business side of things, or seeing, that there's a massive movement taking place, but then you got deeper into it because of your medical background and being a nurse. Were you taught about the, excuse me, were you taught about the endocannabinoid system in school?
No, absolutely not. And I was still sort of under the impression while I was raising my kids through the 80s and 90s that, like I didn't really, I mean, this is so naive. This is sort of showing how naive I was. I didn't even know adults like smoked pot. Like, of course I, I mean, where was I? I
Look
was
at us
under
now.
a rock. I was under a rock. I grew up in the just say no era, and then I raised my children in the dare era. So I really bought that stuff hook, line, and sinker. I don't know why, because I loved the plant as a teen, and it was like it did so much for me as I was,
But then you grew up and you had to adult, and you're like, well, adults don't smoke weed. So that's what you did. So when did it come back into your life?
I would say that was about like only just like strongly in 2018. And I have to say that it was through a trauma, and I'm sorry to introduce trauma to your series, but people are going through trauma right now. Many people are, and collectively we are. And so we need new tools, and cannabis is the tool. And I firmly believe that it's for anxiety. It's intuitively involved in our stress response. Now we're looking at the terpenes as being cannabimimetic, which means that I know it's like my favorite word.
That's so
but
fun.
All that means is that terpenes also mimic, well, first of all, cannabis mimics what endocannabinoids do in the body.
Ooh.
At many different receptors, multiple. CBD has 65 receptor activations on its own. And so, but THC, CBD, THCA, CBDA, THCV, CBG, they all also activate receptors. And in concert, they do things that just blow my mind every time I read about it.
Right?
But,
I mean, feels like every day we're learning something new about the effects of, what this plant does on our system.
Yeah.
And I bet you're hearing some amazing stories and seeing some amazing transformations happen.
They are, I mean, people are getting their lives back. And for me, the sort of starting story was like Charlotte Fiji. And, Charlotte had been what we call in medicine a DNR, do not resuscitate. Okay, right? And so, but she got a little CBD in her, and she started regaining faculties that she had lost along the way. And from a DNR, do not resuscitate, 300 seizures a week or something crazy like that, she was playing on a playground and running. And so, like, you can't be human and look at stories like that and try and continue to try to suppress and repress the knowledge that this plant is really a treasure trove, as Raphael Mechoulam calls it, of medicine. It's a biopharmaceutical chemical factory inside those amazing trichomes, right? I mean, when you look at them, they just blow your mind in and of themselves.
They do. Look, oh my gosh, I have a loop here. I was actually looking at some trichomes earlier today.
Loops.
I want to interject, if you don't mind me. I want to let people know that Charlotte, they named Charlotte's Web after her. Am I right?
Yes.
And I just want to throw that out there. And also Raphael Mechoulam, which you dropped in, which is great. He's one of our cult heroes in the cannabis world. He discovered THC in the 60s. He's an Israeli scientist. I think he's 90. He's 90 plus. At that point, it really doesn't matter, right?
No.
If you get to the 90, it's 90 plus. So I just wanted to interject that to keep it going. Plus, I do want to talk to you, Mo, ask you about the reviewing of strains, the different strains, and how in the world, how challenging is it when you know that every human has a different endocannabinoid system, a different metabolism. The plant interacts with what's inside you, even though you may want it to do something else. It has its own mind, the plant, and it's going to do what it is designed to do now inside your body. So there really isn't any predictable way. If you're reviewing strains, that it's going to affect you like it's going to affect me. That's a challenge, isn't it?
It is a challenge, and that's where sort of the genetics of the, the growing industry comes into place is, so these plants have existed and had relationship with their environment for over 100 years. So in certain locales, when we're talking about landrace genetics, and so they can be reproducible in that effect. Like there are ways to make the plant reproducible. And I think the terpenes have a lot to do with that. What do you think, Liz?
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. I mean, it's all about the stability of the genetics, right? And then you have a more consistent product. That's it. But because we are just coming online, I think as a globe really to really embrace the plant, there's a lot of instability out there. You can get flavors of Blue Dream. You can, get flavors of Acapulco Gold even when you mentioned the landrace strains. But I think it's really about working with, if you're giving cannabis reviews, I think the dream company to work with is a company that has a really, really stable bank of genetics, so that people can trust you, right? Because as a nurse, as a health practitioner, people are coming to you and asking all sorts of things. And now you're telling them, hey, this is, using this product, this cannabis is going to make you feel XYZ. And to Jimmy's point, it may not. And you don't want to put yourself in a position.
Yeah, the endocannabinoid system, like Jimmy said, is under genetic control. And all of us, like, just because I have blue eyes doesn't mean that cannabis is going to react the same way in me that it does with everyone else who has blue eyes. I mean, there's just no way of doing this. And then you have to take into consideration your mindset. So even if yesterday you had a nice experience with a Blue Dream, but, your work day was totally different, you could have a whole different relationship with that, puff that night, and stuff like that.
I love that you said that about mindset. I'm sorry. It's not enough is said about mindset when we're talking about having an experience as a consumer or a patient with, a cannabis product. We've got to talk about that more. I'm so glad you are, Mo.
Yeah. So one thing you do have to do, I think, is, and I think this is what our indigenous cultures did, the ones who discovered the amazing capacity of this plant and brought it from campfire to campfire to campfire to campfire across the entire globe, and then sort of manipulated it so that it would meet their needs in their environment. So like in Jamaica, the cannabis was kind of manipulated to be super cerebral because they didn't have a lot of stress, right? But in
Yaman. Sorry, I had to throw that in. I had to throw Yaman. I had to.
Yaman. But what about climates where they had to toil all day in really hard conditions? Well, those people bred in more CBD, and we're talking indigenous cultures. So what I think the answer to both growing and knowing is like time and attention and just going inside your body. Like you have to understand what that means to be in tune with your body and being in tune with the workings of your mind. And so I've been like practicing that for a long time. And just because, like I mentioned, the trauma and, and just really kind of like, why do we need all this stress? You know what I mean? Like, why do we need it?
I know. And I think it's just so dirty how, of course I'm in Texas, as a reminder, everyone, I'm a little dated. I think it's just so dirty how the government and just politics, the political complex in general, uses cannabis as a pawn and adds the stress and complexity to it, when actually this is a simple plant. If I want to grow a plant in my backyard, you have no problem with it. But if it happens to, have some, cannabinoids inside of it, you will have a problem with it. We shouldn't have this much stress. It shouldn't be this stressful, but
it's ridiculous. I mean, if you consider that only one cannabinoid gets you high or is a euphoriant,
Yeah.
Right.
And what is wrong with euphoria? I mean, for people who have, struggled and struggled and struggled, a little euphoria goes a long way.
Absolutely.
It's a medicinal value.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think
I've got anxiety just listening to all the different cannabinoids, the CBG, the CBD, the CBN, the CBS. I mean, what happened to Columbia Broadcasting Systems in the plant? I mean, it's look, I kid because I can, but I do want to talk about the role the terpene plays, because this is a new area of knowledge for me. I was once told that terpenes steer the cannabinoids in the plant. Is that a good analogy?
Yeah, you could say that the cannabinoids are the gas, and then the terpenes are the driver. And so for one example of that, I just posted on LinkedIn the other day after a little bit of research, is pinene. And I think there were two others. And that will drive the THC towards the GABA receptor, which is the same receptor that benzodiazepines work on. And so if you want a sort of relaxing blend, again, it's all trial and error. It may be relaxing for you. It may drive it towards the GABA receptor, but that's what that word cannabimimetic means, is it's gonna enhance the THC at that receptor target.
So what you've done, hang on, Liz. This is a great, I'm gonna actually apply
I just want to hear her
comment.
say it again, because
I'm going to apply that comment to the fact that there are a lot of people out there when they go onto dispensary websites or to seed groups, right? Genetics, like Green Nexus, right? And they look and they want to see the THC percentage. And that's their buying decision. I want the highest THC. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the one that works the best for you or gets you the most high, because it has to do with those terpenes, right?
100%. And there's a saturation point of THC on the receptors. And then at that point, they actually pull into the cell. They're like, and then there's no more. But this plant is so utilitarian, it's so well utilized. Well, then it will go to the liver and start burning fat, or it'll balance out the insulin levels in your pancreas. And this is the kind of stuff that, the doctors need to know, and, people need to know. And so if somebody who's heard that it balances out blood sugar and they're diabetic and they go to the dispensary and they get like a 28% THC, and they think they have to smoke the whole joint, because more is more in America, right? I mean, they're never going to do it again. And then conversely, if somebody takes CBD and it's like, well, this ain't doing nothing for me, they're never going to do it again. So I think that's where the sort of guidance of the industry comes into play.
That's a great point. Point.
Yeah. Can I ask, Mo, how do you go about educating doctors?
So
outside, after they've gone through med school, I might add. That's an issue too. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little tricky. I'm actually sort of, I'm doing this thing right now where I got back into hospital nursing. I left so I got back in, and I just feel like I'm gonna just be like this plant whisperer in their ear. Like I'm gonna infiltrate from the inside now, because it's not really working from the outside. I understand where they're coming from, because it's a federally illegal plant and they have big mortgages, right? They don't want to. They're not going to let anything infringe upon that, No,
and nice cars.
Super nice cars and kids in expensive colleges. So they can't. But to that point, a lot of nurses are. I think nurses are leading the way, to tell you the truth. Yeah.
I think women should be leading the way in this country beyond cannabis. I'm just saying, I pretty much acquiesce to that. I don't fight that anymore at all. So Mo, we're getting a question about hemp, and Liz, you live in Texas, where Delta 8 is legal, correct?
Yes, it is. As of right now.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Mo,
Let me
what's
check.
your feeling
Yeah, it's still
about
legal.
that whole Delta 8 thing, and versus the legal market versus Delta 8, which is legal because it comes from hemp, but you know what I'm saying. What's your opinion? What
Liz, do you want to go? Do you want to start there? That sounds like that's your forte.
Yeah, well, it's my, yes, it is my forte. Thank you, because we're creating shit over here in Texas. Sorry, I don't know if I can cuss or not, but we really are. What Delta 8 is it's a hemp derivative, and it's created in a lab. It's not a natural kind of cannabinoid. It's not it's a molecule essentially, that's created in a lab, and it gives you a little boost, gives you a little high feeling. I don't like it personally. I don't like the way that it feels. It feels to me like a cheap high. And I don't know what the hell that means, but I'm a flower girl, and so,
yeah.
And I'm a Delta 9 girl. So I, put my life and liberty on the line when I smoke it in Texas, but come and take it, baby. So Delta 9, those are my thoughts on Delta 9, but I'm not a healthcare professional. I mean, are you hearing anything about bad reactions to Delta 9 or
Delta 8? Yeah.
Or Delta 8. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I've got Delta 9 on the brain now. So
yeah, I know. I'm the same thing. I'm like, you make me feel. I mean, I'm a natural woman, right? I mean, I want the plant. I want sun grown. I want the smells. I don't. If I want a chemical high, I mean, I would probably take ketamine because I've heard it does some amazing medicinal things in the body, and I know some medical providers that really like ketamine. So, but Delta 8 is like, it's kind of like, it is a little dirty. It is a little cheap. The way they extract it and make it, it's not my thing. I don't know why we have to go there. It's almost like sugar and corn syrup. Like, why? You know what I mean? Like,
when you can't grow sugar cane and create your own sugar, then you gotta make it in a pot, in the alleyway. No, I don't even know where I was going with that, but it feels like we're trying to circumvent the system because we want Delta 9 so badly. Now what we have is hemp derived Delta 9.
Yeah,
we have that now, made with the same process that is used to get that Delta 8. So if the process is clean and the brand is able to, back that up, I think it's marginally better. I've had Delta 9, hemp derived Delta 9 gummies. And I mean, the gummies were delicious. And Delta 9 was okay,
Yeah.
So, it's the same as Delta 8, though. It's the same.
I would say too, I think that we really need to raise the THC levels in CBD to make it more of an effective product. That 0.3 of THC in the hemp, it's not, I mean, it's doing something. But I think that not so much an entourage effect, but a concerted effort. Like, these things work together, and we don't have the logic of how these things work together yet. But I do know that CBD probably needs a little bit more of a push from THC in order to be the most effective that it can be.
Absolutely.
I've got a question for the nurse in the room. What's a therapeutic dose of CBD?
Well, so if you're about to do something like go on national TV and you've never gone on national TV before, they say that 300 milligrams is going to be the right dose, not 600, not 900, 300. For a daily dose, I would say between 20 and 30, and that depends on whether you're going to take it 3 times a day or 2 times a day, because some people, it keeps them awake all night. Some people, it puts them to sleep all night. And that's another thing you have to remember, Jimmy, when you brought up that the point about genetics and the the experiences being unreproducible sometimes, is that cannabis is biphasic, right? So on one level, it turns things on, and then on another level, it turns things off. And so in terms of inflammation, it's both anti-inflammatory and pro-inflammatory. And it's all dependent on that dosing. And that dosing is going to be the one that you find in and of yourself. But we're close to knowing, like for the average person, 7.5 milligrams of THC is going to give them a decent enough high, like somebody who hasn't built a tolerance or somebody who isn't super sensitive. 7.5 milligrams is a nice dose. Anything over that, you're going to, for the average person, they're going to start experiencing, nervousness, anxiety, paranoia, that kind of thing.
It's an uncomfortable feeling is the best way to describe it. And everybody has an edible story, right?
Yeah.
Too much, right?
Yeah.
So Nurse Mo, let's pretend I took I took 50 milligrams instead of 5 milligrams, and I'm really uncomfortable. Besides hydration, rest, what are some of the things that you recommend to people that may have done too much of an edible?
So you're going to chew on peppercorns.
I knew you were going to say that.
Chew on peppercorns.
Why? I hear it all the time, Liz. I hear it all the time.
I've never heard that, Jimmy. I'm glad. I'm going to carry some around with me in my pocket now.
But usually I usually hear it from educators. I remember the first person I heard it from was Emma Chasen from Oregon. I think she's an educator out there too.
Yeah.
And but what else? Doesn't pure CBD bring down the THC high?
Yeah. So peppercorns interact directly with the CB2 receptor, and that's a relaxant. That's a sort of a relaxant, anti-anxiety. CBD doesn't take the high down. It takes down the negative affects of the high, like the nervousness or the, what's that? I'm in Texas.
Sitting in the middle seat of an airplane, for instance, is a very uncomfortable thing for everybody, right? We like,
yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I get it.
CBD, they call those, those are actually psychotic effects. And so that's why they're studying CBD as an antipsychotic in schizophrenic patients at high doses.
Well, I don't even want to get into the other plant medicine that's always grouped in with cannabis. Psilocybin is really where I'm going with that, just because I think that's a completely different animal for a completely different show. And we're up against it. Mo, you're an educator. How do people find you if they want to talk to you more? Or you're writing blogs, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm writing. I write a lot. I love writing. It's a fun skill for me. You can find me on LinkedIn at I think it's just under my name. Yep. I just got back into my Instagram account. That's at Smyth Med. My company is called Smyth Med. And my website is www.smythmed.com. And I spell my name SMYTH.
There you go. Fantastic stuff. Thank you. And I want to thank
Green Nexus. Don't forget Green Nexus.
I was going to thank Tor and Green Nexus next, and for hooking us up and getting you on here. And it's great. And I love the guy. I can't wait to one day. I've met so many people through Zoom and calls, but so many people I haven't met in 3D over 2 years. And
he's pretty special.
It's going to be fun when we finally do get together. But anyway, Mo, thank you so much for joining us. And please don't be a stranger to Pro Cannabis Media. You'll be welcome here anytime.
Liz, thank you so much. It was super lovely to meet you. Jimmy, thank you.
You'll be back.
Bye.
2 more panelists coming in to talk growing. Don't go away.
I'm a fan.
That's Liz Grow, Pro Cannabis Media's newest show host for a new show, Calling All Growers with Liz Grow. Liz is a High Times TV personality who'll be joining our talk show program starting in February.
I picture a company that stands the test of time.
Stopping at nothing to meet the people who are growing this plant generation after generation.
Calling All Growers will be more than just another interview and talk show, especially if you subscribe to the Calling All Growers workshop and webinar. That's 2 weeks after the live talk show on the same growing network, Pro Cannabis Media and PCM TV.
This is a show about interviewing the top growers in the game. It's a platform where they can share tips, tricks, and secrets for those growers coming up. Cultivators are some of my favorite people in the world, and I can't wait to talk to some of these growers.
It all starts on Wednesday, February 9th, live at 8 p.m. Eastern on PCM TV, on Roku, Apple, and ProCannabisMedia.com. Subscription-only workshops 2 weeks later on the 23rd. Sign up today to hold your spot.
What's your favorite strain?
Free. If you're a grower or interested in learning more, tune in or...
You're missing out. Calling all growers with Liz Grow.
Pro Cannabis Media Programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be.
Difference is building a solution for that individual, not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the costs low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
The Tanzanian cheetah can run upwards of 80 miles per hour. Relying on keen eyesight, the cheetah hunts during the day. Here we see a cheetah driving down the desert road smoking a joint. What have I done? Now he's getting a DUI from the cheetah police, which means he'll have to go to cheetah court, pay up to 10,000 cheetah dollars, and probably end up in cheetah jail. Don't be like the Tanzanian cheetah.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Green Rush Live. I'm Liz Grow, and we have got an amazing third part of the show lined up. We've got Wendy Kornberg of Sunnabis, Humboldt Sun-Grown Farms, and Igor from AskGrowers.com. I don't want to butcher your last name, your beautiful last name.
I can say it. I did it right. Igor Dunaevsky. There you go.
Dunaevsky. Okay.
There you go. And
I saw the A and the E, and I got really nervous.
Understand. And Igor's company is AskGrowers.com. So Igor, I think we'll just start with you, if you don't mind. Tell us about how you came up with AskGrowers.com, and obviously we know how to find it because it's a .com.
Well, initially, I was a big guy on the plant, had a relationship since high school, I guess, but background, I'm like in online marketing. We do a lot of SEO. So I was always interested to jump into the business, but I never really saw how that would be a fit. And then I saw Leafly and Wheat Maps doing like real well. And I felt what was missing is the perspective on the growers, on the producers, on the people who actually, get the actual plant grown and deliver it into the dispensaries. So this is pretty much it. We want to be a marketplace with a focus on growers, tell the story behind brands, behind people. And so basically, when you go to a dispensary and you buy product, we want to be the guys who tell you exactly who is the guy behind the product, or a girl.
Right. And we have one with us, I might add. A grower herself from Humboldt, indeed. Wendy, we've heard your love story, which was a beautiful love story that James told, okay? But tell us, how did you get involved with the cannabis space? Go ahead.
Well, I'm a second-generation cultivator in Humboldt County, so I've always been involved in the space. It wasn't something that, a lot of people discovered later in life in their teenage years or their 20s or their 30s or sometimes much later than that. For me, it was just there are plants that are growing and some of them are weed plants.
It's just life for you.
It's just life.
But it's still a challenge because you're dealing with a living thing. And it's one of the reasons why I've stayed away from growing, because I don't feel comfortable. I can talk about it. I can ask questions, but I just don't, I have a black thumb. I admit it. Okay.
Okay. I don't agree. I don't believe in black thumbs. I know people. Okay, I'm a perfect example. I can grow anything outside, but every single house plant I would kill every single one. Ferns, things that are impossible. Ficus plants, you can't kill this. Oh no, I managed it.
So have I.
Until I started growing orchids, and all of a sudden, for some reason, I can grow orchids really well. So then I started, easing into other things, and there's just an understanding of like not over caring for something and not completely ignoring it. So if you just kind of find a balance and a rhythm, that black thumb will turn green, I guarantee.
Well, I killed an orchid plant already this year.
Well, orchids are easy to kill.
But all of my house plants are thriving. I'm happy to report, Wendy.
Well, you're in Texas. That's not fair. Try and grow.
She's in Humboldt.
Try and grow anything in New England, will you please? It's like 10 degrees outside. Igor, you look like you're in a tropical area. I got to ask, where are you calling us from?
Nicaragua.
Wow. I think this is the first call we've ever had. What's that?
But I'm on vacation here. But talking about New England, we have a guy, we actually interviewed a guy who grows outdoor cannabis in Alaska. Because in the summertime, the daylight is very long. And I would love to travel to Alaska and try his cannabis, because I think outdoor growing in Alaska has to do some serious product out there.
Yeah. Have you seen some of the vegetables that come out of Alaska during that season? I mean, they're like, we're talking massive tomatoes, and I've seen some colas, from some folks that I know, growers that I know in Alaska. And it's like magical. I just imagine like what the terp profiles are on them. I mean, what they smell like. It just seems like, oh.
I talked to my first person ever from Alaska today by total coincidence. We connected on Alignable. We set up a little meeting, and he was interested in what I'm doing. And I said, look, I've never talked to anybody from Alaska before. I'd love to talk with you. And then I find out that he's in the business, and now we're actually going to do a show. And Liz, I'm going to recruit you for this for sure, on growing cannabis in Alaska. So Igor, it sounds like you have some connections there too.
Well, we go and interview people around the country, asking how they grow, what they do. And I just never thought, you have people growing in greenhouse in California where the sun is shining 24/7. And then this guy in between of pine trees and mountains is growing, Alaskan cannabis completely outdoor.
And since you're in Nicaragua, I have no idea. What are the laws about cannabis in Nicaragua?
Me neither. I'm on a vacation. I'm taking a break.
That's a good answer.
That's fine. Wendy, what are the biggest challenges you think facing the growing industry today? Is it the same as opening a dispensary? Is it access to capital, or is it knowledge and research and the makeup of the plant? I mean, it's kind of a open question.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, a whole 20-hour show in and of itself. But to, kind of simplify it, a lot of it depends on the state. Access to capital is a massive problem. Federal regulation requires that you stay in the state that you grow in or that you're working in. So if you're a cultivator and your state overgrows, which pretty much every single one has either allowed too much cultivation or not enough, what do you do with the excess product? It's, it becomes compost heap, or you sit on it and wait until ideally the market settles a little bit. It's massively problematic. And really what we're seeing is that most people go into it with really starry eyes, and they just don't really get the reality that it is farming. It's farming. You're growing a plant for, a mass product, and that's how that goes. And, the other thing we see a lot of is people coming in from other industries. They're like, well, I do real estate really well, so I can totally do a bang up job on weed. And it's just, then they have, the amount of messages I get from people that are like, oh my God, save my grow. I hired this consultant and they told me to do this, this, and this. And I'm like, who are these people that are consulting? Like, if you're going to hire a consultant, really dig into their background and make sure that they're not going to ruin your business. Because unless you're one of these multi-million-dollar capital companies, you don't have the loss of an entire crop or an entire cycle. It's caution.
Right, Liz.
Amen. Cautionary tale. I mean, we experienced something similar here in Texas, Wendy, with the hemp market. We were able to grow in 2020 for the first time. And I think we had a little over 2,000 farmers get their licenses. And I'm sure far less than that actually tried their hand. And this year, only half have reapplied for licenses. And so, that does tell you a lot. A lot of them do go in with just all of these hopes. And, cannabis makes us feel good. Working with the plant, there's an energy about being around it. And you believe in yourself and you're inspired. And then you're like, oh, wait a minute. And then there's real life. And I have to sell what I'm growing.
Exactly. It's still a business. And the joy is there's a huge joy in cultivating this plant. I mean, James talked about not being very woo-woo. He says it a lot. And I'm really on the opposite end where I'm just like, oh, there's absolutely an energetic thing that goes on. And it's not just with cannabis, but there's a special relationship there. But you still have to be able to make money off of it if that is going to be your job that creates the finances for your family and yourself. So, balance.
Right. Absolutely.
Igor, what's the most popular question that comes up all the time on your site?
Well, let's put it this way. The most popular question we have for growers is, what's the approach to sustainability? Because, there are many methods how you can approach growing. But I think, the idea why we even started this, approach in growers is, back in the day, in the days before it was legal, if you were lucky, you would know someone who grows weed, and that's how you would get your weed. Otherwise, you would just get it from someone who would, sell it to you, but you wouldn't know the backstory of it. So now when you can actually go and learn about like Wendy, and you can ask her how she grows it, what's her approach, because, it is good that now you can test cannabis. You can test it for the, for the chemical, for the residue. But also, there are many things that every grower or different growers have different approaches. And I think sustainability, it's like a hype word. Everybody's talking about sustainability. But there are many things that you can do different in regards to the plant. And I think it's not only love. Though I think love is the foundation of the whole thing. You want your grower to love the plant, right? When you get the cannabis, you want it to come with the love from the grower, right? But also, I think Wendy can tell you more, but I think we love growers who are very involved in soil, how they use the minimum amount of chemicals, how they do the compost. And so I think, to me, that is all. I'm always excited to hear growers that are very involved in the process. Like you mentioned, many people jump into the business to make money, but I think it's much more than the monies. I think it's a lot of your personal how much you put yourself. What because this is, at the end of the day, this is you. The product you put on the shelves is what is you, how you perceive yourself,
So you're telling me that the grower takes on the personality of the plant, or the plant takes on the personality of the grower?
The plant takes the personality of the grower. 100%.
Wendy, is that true?
I totally agree. I'm not going to disagree with any of that. I would have guessed the most common question was, what's wrong with my plant? Because that's what we see the most of. But I love that it's sustainability. That's way better.
I have to say, what I love about AskGrowers.com is the fact that it does kind of introduce the grower to the consumer of the end product. I can go on AskGrowers.com and find out about new strains and what maybe a certain strain, what type of effect it'll have on me. Of course, I can click into those grower stories and find out about the grower potentially growing my product. And so that's what I really felt was cool as a consumer, not a grower groupie, we'll say. It's like, that was a really great feature, I think, of the site, Igor.
It's my personal favorite. I mean, I read every single interview. Like, I come up with the questions. One of the first questions I had, do you think people who smoke weed are losers? Because this is the perception we all were, we grew up with. Like in high school, you would always be told that if you smoke weed, you never achieve nothing. You will be like, So I would always come up with that question, and every grower would say, look, man, I smoke, and this is how far I made. So, I mean, if you call me a loser, that's fine. But I mean, I'm a living example of how far you can go.
I love that.
Don't ever call me a loser. Okay, please don't believe. Okay, all right. And it had to do more with my own ADHD in the 70s than anything else. And the fact that I found out later in life that I was allergic to hops, and I kept puking after I had 3 beers. So the 15 and 16-year-olds in my peer group were giving me crap for not being able to hold my beer. So I turned to an alternative. And guess what? I found out I could actually focus better in class when I had it in my system.
Yeah. Won't it be nice when we live in a world where we don't have to justify our plant intake any longer? Any of us, it's really, and again, I'm in Texas. I'm deep in the heart of Texas, guys, from behind enemy lines. It's probably why I love growers so much and why I like to be close to them so much. But truly, it's all of these great conversations and all of this education, like what you're doing at Ganjier, Wendy, is just so incredible. Just educating on a different level. I think it's not just, and I've only got to scratch the surface in my research, but it's a course that I feel like I could get into. I'm not a grower, but I'm a huge fan and I want to learn more from end to end. Could we talk a little bit about that course?
Yeah, and it's it's important that you say you're not a grower, because it's not really for growers. It's not a cultivation course. It is literally a sommelier course for cannabis. Sommelier means a wine steward, so this is a weed steward, and I mean it's phenomenal. I'm still blown away that I am a part of that project, because it's what we're 3.5. We lose track of time. 3 years deep, maybe. Have had the first round of students come through, and we never made it as a pay to play situation. It's always like, listen, this is a real course. This is serious, and you might not pass. And I have not taken the test yet. I will admit it. I'm not like, I helped create the course content, and I'm still like, oh my gosh, it's rough. Like, it is a lot of information. It covers the history of cannabis, consumption methods, social situations, sales. I mean, all of it, genetics, history, all of it. And the information you have to hold in your brain. This is a college course. And then at the very end, there is a test on the systematic assessment protocol, which is an app that we made, which is patent pending. Really exciting about that. And the app basically goes through and you take your cannabis or your concentrate and you systematically assess it. And you have to be able to peg it the way that the council has done in order to pass the test. So if you say this was really harsh, and the council we all grade everything ahead of time, and the council goes through and we say, no, it was actually really smooth. If you miss too many of those, if you're off by too much, you don't pass. So it's incredible. And we're finding that, most of the students that are really studying hard and that are getting together, they're grouping. It's the coolest thing ever. Like, they're getting together as a group online and practicing these things. So it's like taking stoners and taking that culture and then elevating it to this insane level that we never would have even thought about 10 years ago. And just seeing the people come together and the connections that are made and the business opportunities and the way people are utilizing this in their own businesses. I mean, mind-blowingly phenomenal. It's probably one of my favorite things I've ever done in my life, is to be a part of this program.
That is incredible. And at the end, you get to call yourself a Ganjier.
You get to be a certified Ganjier.
Ganjier.
Not Ganjier and not Ganjier.
Texans are going to have a problem saying that now. I got to tell you.
Where would people go to find out about this course, and if they wanted to take it and all that?
We are open for enrollment for 2022, this year, I should say. So it's www.ganjier.com, and that's spelled like ganja, right? So GANJ IER. Ganja sommelier. Ganjier.
Gotcha. And I know this is a lot of growers keep their secret sauce inside them, right? You grew up in that area. I'm guessing you know quite a few. Is there one basic tip if I'm gonna start, okay? If I'm gonna start to try and grow a plant, from I'll get my seeds from Green Nexus because he's my buddy, and I get my Bounty because I know that Bounty is where you germinate. That's supposedly the best towel to germinate. Wait, your eyes went up. Am I wrong?
I'm sure. I'm not sure that the towel matters if you're going to germinate in a wet towel.
Okay, I thought that was like the first step. Okay. Maybe I should start with a clone, right? If it was already existing, is that an easier way to start?
So the first step actually is determining where you're going to grow. Are you growing outside or are you growing inside? Because if you're inside, you need lights. And
who must be obeyed will not allow it in the house. Okay, so it is outside. Maybe it's far away.
All right. So
Sorry.
if it's out, well, I mean, far away. I know that one too. We used to do guerrilla grows where you hiked chicken manure on your bag, in a bag on your back, 2 miles up the mountain. So
no, I don't know that. I don't know that. Right? I'm from New England. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. Well, when it was, again, that's probably a whole nother show, but quick history of cannabis in California is that when it was highly persecuted back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, even into the early 2000s, we would do what was called a guerrilla grow, which means that you weren't really growing on your land. You generally were growing in the rancher's territory or possibly on Bureau of Land Management land, or maybe on, your neighbor's property, or maybe on your own property if you had a big enough ranch, but it wasn't anywhere accessible. So you would hike through the woods, you'd take different paths every day so that you didn't create a trail that could be tracked. And this was all to escape the persecution of the helicopters that would fly around and try and eradicate the grow. So you didn't want to be caught when you were in there. So we did things that were wild, like, hiking 2 miles uphill, carrying manure up to a spot that was, a prime cultivation location.
I mean, I love my weed, but I'm not carrying manure up a mountain.
Well, you don't have to because she does.
I'm not anymore either.
I respect those who do. Okay, I really do. Igor, go ahead. You want to say something?
Jimmy, but I think you really get things too complicated. I mean, it's
I usually do.
And the beauty and the beauty of it, it's like, even if it doesn't happen the first season, you can always like retry. And the thing, it's like, Wendy, tell me, there is like one, what do you call it? Like there are plants that grow within 3-month period, and then there are the ones that grow like 6-7 months, right? So you can start with the 3-month ones, and it's like, I mean, they're very surviving. I mean, I understand for Wendy, it's a completely different game because it's like industrial production. She has like this really hardcore compliance issues. But for you, I mean, it's like, trust me, it's much easier than you could potentially think. You just give it a shot, and it's like it's a surviving plant. It's a survivor.
I agree with Igor that it's easier than you think, but I do caution people that are the 3-month plant that he's talking about is called an auto flower, and it's not photo period sensitive, so it doesn't react to how many hours of light there are. So if it's a long day or a short day, it doesn't matter. It's going to go through its life cycle just how it would anyway. The problem we're seeing a lot of with autoflowers is that their nutrient cycling is completely different than a photo plant. So they're trying to feed it according to a photo plant, and it doesn't need that. So we're seeing deficiencies and toxicities across the board on new growers that are growing auto plants. So I actually don't recommend you start with an autoflower. I really recommend you start with a photo and either a seed or a clone. Clones are easier because you have a female, so that's easier. It's automatically going to be adjusted. Usually those go inside, but if you want them to be outside, you have to pay attention to your light cycle. So don't put it outside without supplementary light unless you have over 14 hours of daylight. Pushing towards 16 is even better. And then you just put it in the ground, like living soil. Get it in real dirt. Don't get it in, dead dirt. Get it in soil, and then water it and just see what happens and go slow. This is the thing, like the biggest tip I can give new growers is like, If there's something wrong, slow down, because everybody likes to say you put it out there on the internet, right? Igor's nodding. You get this. You put it on the internet and you're going to have 20 people giving you 40 ideas about what's wrong with my plant. And you're going to go across the board, underboard. It's going to be a mess. So just slow it down. If there's something wrong, kind of tap in, see what it might be. There's, you can do testing and things, but really a lot of times nature will self-correct. So just learn how to water, learn how to be mellow, learn how to be zen with your plant, and just chill and just hang out with it.
I like it. Look at Igor's going, that's right. That's right. I like that.
But it's true. It's true. It's a psychological relief, It's the time you take with yourself, you think, you balance. And the thing is, we all anticipate to get things tonight, done right now, get results tonight. And you learn that nature has different, distances, different time frames. And it takes time, and you have to be, patient. And you can't smoke it the next day you just,
Let's not even get into that, the extraction part. Go ahead, Liz, you have a question.
So Wendy, being the outdoor grower that you are, what would your advice be to somebody who is putting the plant in the ground outdoors in Texas? No, I'm just kidding. Not really. I have high fences, but should I put a net over it to protect it against the bugs and the critters? That's my main thing. What's going to get it? I've got the sun, I've got the soil. I'm just scared of those just animals and things.
Critters. I like the way you said critters. Yeah, that was cool.
The ugly buggies. Okay, so that is the other tip I would give to people is start 3 times the amount of plants you want to end with. And this is true for all farming. My mom taught me this as a kid with the tomatoes. If you want 10 tomato plants, you start 30. You start 1 for you start 1 for the mice, and you start 1 to cull. So one that's weak genetics. Which is hard with cannabis, right? When you're paying $10 a seed, nobody wants to get rid of those. Nobody wants to snip them off because this one was weak. I'm the worst offender on this. Honestly, I can't throw plants away. I'm horrible. But you're supposed to. But as far as bugs go, netting it is an interesting idea. I can't say I would recommend that. Honestly, that seems like going way above and beyond. You might as well just build a little greenhouse around it if you're going to try and do that. But greenhouses create a wonderful environment for all the bugs. So again, that's not necessarily something I'd recommend. In general, a strong, healthy soil creates a strong, healthy plant, and those can fend off bugs. Okay. So every year I get some type of pest. I do. It's normal. I'm like, oh yeah, I think it was actually one of the Gangier students was like, oh, you have thrips. And I'm like, yep, I sure do. Look at that. There's some thrips on there. They're like, what are you going to do? They said, I don't know. I'm going to watch it. It's not causing a problem yet. And I'm out in nature. There's wind. There's other predatory bugs. I have companion plants. So there's all kinds of other vegetation going on in and amongst the cannabis. There's different flowers that bring in, minute pirate bugs, and it brings in the wasps. And, sure enough, by the end of the season, those thrips they never caused a problem. Nature balanced it out. And it was just kind of, taking it step by step. So if you already know that you're in a zone where you're going to see a certain pest, so that your friends and neighbors have trouble with spider mites, be prepared for that. Get beneficial insects, set those out every single month, and be proactive about it. And then if a problem does arise, tap in with someone like Igor or his group, right? And be like, okay, this is the pest I'm seeing. I need it identified. You cannot eradicate or mitigate pests without identifying what it is first solidly. Okay, a green peach aphid is going to be treated differently than the hemp aphid. Okay, a spider mite, you're going to treat that differently than a russet mite. So you have to know what your problem is in order to solve it. Same thing with deficiencies and toxicities. If you're just going, I'm throwing everything at it, I don't know what's working, you're probably going to end up in more trouble than you started. So just put it in and let it go. Again, let nature do its course, and companion plant, put other plants around it. Don't leave it isolated by itself.
Wendy, but I mean, based on my experience though, I see that I think weed is a really surviving plant, it has a strong defense, right? I mean, that's what the smells, that's part what the smells comes from, right? Because to scare off the insects.
Yeah, and the resin is a protection as well. So it's called weed. It's a weed.
Yeah, for a reason.
I mean,
that much I knew. That much I knew. By the way, when I started this whole thing, I didn't realize that there was actually a male plant and a female plant. Okay, and I was not surprised to find out that the only one you really want is the female plant because they blossom and they're beautiful.
Well, you need the male plant, Jimmy. But
yeah. I know what we're for. Okay, look. Hey, I just want to thank Wendy and Igor. You guys were fantastic. Okay. And the best part about this is we're going to continue the Grow conversation with Liz's show on February 9th in prime time, 8 p.m. Eastern. And we want everybody who's been watching this show and adding questions in the chat room to make sure we're trying appointment viewing for the first time. Well, not the first time, but certainly we're going to publicize this a little bit more than we have in the past. Everything else has been organic. So please tune in for that. Wendy, thank you so much. And of course, we can read about you in Skunk Magazine, correct?
Yeah, well, not about me, but I
not
write
about
in
you,
Skunk
but
Magazine.
you're an editor at Skunk Magazine. Is that accurate? Yeah.
Yep. And also I do a lot of sharing on Instagram. So Sunnabis, Sunnabis, like sun-grown cannabis. And I talk a lot about Korean natural farming, our farming methodology, and things like that on there.
There you go. And Igor, it's askgrowers.com. It's pretty easy, right?
Guns, yeah. I mean, this is it, man. This is it. Guns, yeah.
Enjoy. I tell you, I'm so jealous that he's in a tiki bar in like probably 85-degree perfect weather. And I have to go put on 4 layers just to get home because it's like 15 degrees outside in Boston today. Liz, what great fun. I am so looking forward to her show and so looking forward to welcome to the team, Liz.
Thank you. Oh, it's a pleasure to be here and an honor to be here. And I'm just thrilled to have just gotten to chat with you two. I learned so much. Wendy, I'm just I want to talk to you more. No, I want to talk to you too, Igor, more, but I don't meet a lot of female growers. So just, I don't live in California or in any of the states where it's legal to grow even. So it's really, I love meeting female growers. It's just kind of exciting for me. So.
So guys, thank you very much.
There's less of us than you'd think. So I would love to chat more too.
All right. Well, I have some ideas actually. All right. That'll wrap up this edition of Green Rush Live. I just want to thank my technical staff, Dan French. That's the whole staff. And my production coordinator, Isabel Turner, who continues to marvel at the fact that we get this done every week. And we're very proud of the product that we share with the public. So a reminder again for Liz Grow, I'm Jimmy Young. It's a whole new world of weed out there, people. Use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Vote for the Senate. Democrat Gary Chambers Jr. wants to unseat Republican John Kennedy in Louisiana. And this sesh has gone viral.
I'm Gary Chambers, and I'm running for the U.S. Senate, and I approve this message.
Mississippi is poised to become the 37th state in the country to decriminalize cannabis and start a legitimate medical program. Plus, research from Spain says cannabis enhances sexual pleasure in young people. Hey, it's great to be forever young. We Talk News is next.
Pro Cannabis Media Programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi everyone, I'm Elena Pinto for Pro Cannabis Media, and in this week's episode of We Talk News, the weeds are rising in the South. And 2022 is already showing promise for forging the way toward more normalization of cannabis, particularly in the form of politicians.
Every 37 seconds, someone is arrested for possession of marijuana. Since 2010, state and local police have arrested an estimated 7.3 million Americans for violating marijuana laws, over half of all drug arrests. Black people are 4 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana laws than white people.
Democratic U.S. Senate candidate Gary Chambers Jr., a progressive activist from Louisiana, just dropped this campaign ad that's definitely raising eyebrows and THC levels. In the ad, Chambers is seen in a New Orleans field smoking a big old blunt, discussing the continued social injustice and incarceration associated with the plant, a tactic he's using to try and blow smoke over Republican opponent John Kennedy. Earlier today, PCM's Jimmy Young spoke with George Gage, former CEO of MJ BizCon, and now the founder of MJ Unpacked, about his thoughts.
He's smoking a joint on camera and bringing up the fact that Black people are 3.5 times more, get arrested 3.5 more times than white people just because they've been profiled. And it's really the first time that you see a politician, someone who's running for office, smoking on camera and explaining about the injustices that have been part of this world for many, many years. And I will be sharing the video with you after this interview, I promise. It's also
well, Dan, keep your finger on the censor button, because all I got to say about that is yeah. Listen, the more that we can put this into the mainstream media and really, listen, I'll move down to Louisiana and vote for the guy.
This year, smokable medical marijuana became legal in Louisiana under certain conditions. But for a candidate to boldly toke up in a campaign ad shows how much further we're headed toward this plant becoming just a regular part of everyday life. And with that, let's check in on what's happening in the nation's capital. Here's Vote Pro Podcast's Phil Adams.
Hi, I'm Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast, and this is the We Talk News DC report. After 1 full year in office, Joe Biden has yet to make good on any of his campaign pledges regarding cannabis. As a candidate, Biden ran on a platform of decriminalizing and rescheduling marijuana. He also stated during a primary debate that anyone convicted of nonviolent cannabis offenses, quote, should be let out of jail, their records expunged, be completely zeroed out. To date, however, no executive action has been taken toward federal decriminalization or rescheduling of cannabis under the Controlled Substances Act. Meanwhile, thousands of Americans continue to serve time in federal prison for nonviolent marijuana offenses. In addition, the lack of clarity on exactly where the administration stands has caused ongoing confusion for the cannabis industry and consumers. On the plus side, Biden has done nothing to interfere with state implementation of cannabis reform. In an interview with Marijuana Moment, NORML's new political director, Morgan Fox, said, quote, this inaction on modest cannabis policy reform over the past year is inexcusable and is a betrayal of the people that put the president in office. In a related story, a new poll shows that a majority of Americans feel Biden has not made much, if any, progress toward keeping his campaign pledges on cannabis. The survey by YouGov and The Economist asked respondents to rate the president's progress in achieving his campaign promises. On the issue of decriminalization, 54% of respondents said he's made little or no progress. When asked to look ahead to the coming year, 58% said they expect more of the same from Biden in 2022. A candidate for the U.S. Senate is shown smoking weed in his first campaign ad. Louisiana Democrat Gary Chambers released a 37-second campaign spot this week to highlight his opposition to cannabis criminalization. The ad opens with a voiceover of Chambers stating, quote, every 37 seconds, someone is arrested for smoking marijuana. The candidate goes on to list several more statistics about the harms of cannabis criminalization, all while seated in an armchair in a field smoking a cannabis blunt. Chambers, a longtime advocate for social justice in Baton Rouge, is running to unseat Republican incumbent John Kennedy. That's the We Talk News DC report for this week. I'm Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast.
And more states in the South could see legal cannabis soon. This week, the Mississippi House of Representatives voted in favor of the state's Medical Cannabis Act, putting Mississippi in place to become the 37th state with legal medical marijuana. The state Senate also voted in favor of the bill earlier this month, but some amendments were made to it. And now that bill goes back to the Senate before heading to the governor's desk for signing. And in South Carolina, Senator Tom Davis has introduced the South Carolina Compassionate Care Act, which would legalize medical marijuana in the state. Davis says he's spoken to the state's Senate Majority Leader and has received a commitment that it will be one of the very first things taken up, with the legislative session beginning next week. Sticking with the Southern U.S., let's check in with Heather Allman for this week's Florida Report.
From Cannabis Law Report, I'm Heather Allman with this week's Florida Report for Weed Talk News. Next month, Miami will host Cannadelic, the world's first cannabis and psychedelics conference. The multifaceted event boasts some of the biggest names in both industries, as well as several Florida lawmakers. One topic up for panel discussion will be the inevitable increase of medical marijuana operators in Florida, as the number of state licenses will double within the next 6 months. On that note, the glaring void of minority representation in Florida's licenses is unsustainable, and it only took 5 years and a lawsuit for the state to finally announce in December that one medical marijuana license will be awarded exclusively to a Black farmer. Applications for this long overdue license will be accepted for a 5-day timeframe opening March 21st. The $146,000 price tag, however, is currently under fire, skyrocketing from $96,000 for the state's original licenses. This solo license is being condemned as both predatory and discriminatory. A new week, another bust in Jacksonville, as a woman was arrested inside the airport and charged with trafficking. Despite our legal state program, South Florida airports in Miami and Orlando have official cannabis bans in place. And as a result, illegal trafficking has sharply increased in North Florida. According to authorities, at least 500 pounds of marijuana have been seized at the Jacksonville airport alone since April of last year. It's no surprise to the Department of Justice, who recently reported that interstate domestic trafficking has officially supplanted international cannabis imports, despite the expansion of state medical programs. That's a wrap for Florida Cannabis this week. I'm Heather Allman from Cannabis Law Report for Weed Talk News.
As New Jersey dives into the legal world of adult use cannabis, it looks like the ability to grow your own plants at home is being stifled, at least for now. While state lawmakers say they're not against the idea of ultimately letting folks grow their own, they say it's just too early. Edmund DeVoe, president of the New Jersey Cannabis Association, spoke with the state senator Nick Scutari about the reasons why.
I do see that it will happen at some point in time. I don't doubt that. I'm not against marijuana being grown at home and utilized for medical purposes and maybe even just recreational purposes. But we've got to let this industry kind of get off the, not even off the ground yet. And if we flood this market with tons of additional, product, and that's what happens. I know people think it's going to be used for personal use only, but it doesn't happen that way. The anecdotal evidence in Colorado and many other places is that there's a proliferation of home grow that just floods the adult market, and in other markets where it's not illegal, it's shipped into Nebraska and other places.
New Jersey, Illinois, and Washington are the only states that specifically prohibit the cultivation of any cannabis plants without a license. But New Jersey is the only one that still prohibits its medical marijuana patients from cultivating cannabis at home. So hopefully the state's mindset will grow on that one. And while safe banking for cannabis companies may seem out of reach right now on Capitol Hill, a pair of senators in Pennsylvania are looking to get ahead of the game. Republican John DeSanto and Democrat Sharif Street are planning to co-sponsor a bill that would safeguard banks and insurers against being penalized by the state of Pennsylvania. The senators say not allowing companies access to work with financial institutions is a public safety risk. And if adopted, this could set a huge precedent for how cannabis companies handle money going forward. So with that, let's check in with Claudia Post for the rest of this week's Pennsylvania Report.
Claudia Post from Scarlet Express.
and I'm here in the Keystone State, Pennsylvania, reporting for We Talk News. What's up? Pennsylvania announced a bill that legalized marijuana, but the bill defines cannabis to include industrial hemp. As I say, the hemp people are not happy about this because if the bill becomes law, hemp will be subject to the same rules and regs as marijuana. That's not going to work too well. So, my fellow Pennsylvanians, I encourage you to call, write, or send a carrier pigeon to your state legislator to amend this bill so that hemp is removed from the definition of cannabis. This week, a really interesting article came across my desk, and I'm going to share it with you. It's going to take up a little bit more time than my normal reporting. And it's about a study that was done with medical marijuana patients here in Philadelphia under the auspices of Thomas Jefferson University. And Thomas Jefferson has a whole department devoted to medical or marijuana research. And the folks were complaining about their struggle to get medical marijuana. They said that doctors are ill-informed, that people working at the dispensary counter oftentimes are ill-informed, and they told the researchers that obviously, in a lot of cases, it's very expensive and too hard to find a lot of really good, solid information about the product. So what we did was that they spoke with this group of researchers, and they said really what the basic core problem is that marijuana is still a Schedule 1. When it is being taken off, whenever that happens, of course, the sunlight will happen and people will have more access and understanding. But federal prohibition is why pharmacies that handle prescription drugs don't handle cannabis, and why some doctors still refuse to prescribe. Additionally, subsidized healthcare plans run by states and the federal government, like Medicaid and Medicare, offer very sick or low-income folks free or reduced pharmaceutical drug prices. No such program exists for cannabis. Similar complaints can be heard from medical marijuana patients across the country. But in California, 25 years after medical marijuana was legalized, they're finally allowing cannabis in hospitals for long-term patients and for long-term care centers, because very ill patients want to take cannabis, want to use their cannabis, and they now are allowed to do so in California. Not allowed anywhere else, but in California. As the Pennsylvania patients found out, despite all the political support and vast advancement of adult use legalization, things really haven't changed that much for formalizing medical cannabis. Let's fight to normalize every form of marijuana in Pennsylvania. That's a wrap for this week from our Pennsylvania Cannabis Report. I'm Claudia Post from Scarlet Express, and I'll be back next week to talk about what's hot and what's not in Pennsylvania from We Talk News. Have a great week.
In Vermont, a new bill brought to the table this week would decriminalize drug possession. And while the state does have legal weed, adult use sales are not yet up and running. Lawmakers hope the passing of this bill would help to address racial disparities in drug enforcement, something all too present in the cannabis world even today. With more from Vermont, here's Jessie Lynn-Dolan with this week's report.
I'm Jessie Lynn-Dolan from Nurse Grown Organics and Vermont Cannabis Nurses, and this is the We Talk News Vermont Report. Nicolas Carest was sworn in as the new U.S. Attorney for the District of Vermont. He says he'll be focusing on violent crime, white-collar crime, and bias incidences, and thankfully, cannabis will not be a top priority. The Cannabis Control Board met this week to discuss peer networking events for social equity applicants and review some of their proposed rules. They have officially filed Rules 3, Medical Cannabis, and Rules 4, Compliance and Enforcement, with the Secretary of State. They're officially seeking public comment with a hearing planned to take place in mid to late February, but for now you can submit comments on their website. The Cannabis Control Board also issued guidance for municipalities. The guide was created to assist towns and other municipalities working with individuals and businesses seeking to establish a cannabis business. Vermontawana's winter ski days get-togethers are up and running. The next one is at Bolton Valley on January 27th, and then February 6th at Jay Peak. They've also just announced Ski Can, a one-day music, skiing, and cannabis festival on Wednesday, March 23rd at Magic Mountain Ski Resort in Londonderry, Vermont. Featured bands include the Aerolites, Begsteeler Barrow, and Saints and Liars. Discounted tickets will be available for registered medical patients. That's the Vermont Report for Weed Talk News. I'm Vermont's cannabis nurse, Jessie Lynn Dolan.
The coronavirus pandemic and the Omicron variant seem to be seeping in and wreaking havoc on certain industries, including cannabis. Pure Oasis, the first Black-owned dispensary in Massachusetts, says its plans for a shop in downtown Boston are being held up by the variant's wrath. The owner of Pure Oasis says construction companies are facing staffing and material shortages, and that many contractors are not willing to submit a competitive bid for the project. So who knows how long it'll be before Pure Oasis can open up shop in Boston. And with a closer look at what's happening in the Bay State this week, here's Ron Marshallsea with the Massachusetts Report.
I'm Ron Marshallsea with the Massachusetts Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. As the Omicron variant continues to surge, Massachusetts cannabis companies are facing significant shortages in certain packaging and construction materials that are essential to their operations. Some of these include vaporizer batteries and cartridges, childproof containers, and the steel beams and air conditioning equipment used to build indoor cultivation facilities. Cannabis producers and retailers said they are scrambling to find alternatives that are often at a much higher cost. According to New Cannabis Ventures managing partner Alan Brockstein, a downward trend in year-over-year cannabis sales growth in states appears to be stabilizing. He writes, "While cannabis company revenue growth isn't entirely dependent upon how the states in their markets are growing, as many companies are expanding organically in their states of operation or into other states or by acquisition, the underlying demand for cannabis certainly plays an important role." He also says that encouraging trends are being seen in Illinois and Michigan, and year-over-year growth is now being seen right here in Massachusetts. And finally, the Holyoke City Council approved special permits for 2 marijuana manufacturing establishments, ACMJ and Canalive, even with some council members concerned the vote may violate a buffer zone ordinance which has been described as flawed. The concern centered on a possible violation of a current ordinance that prevents cannabis businesses from operating within 200 feet of other uses, such as schools. Assistant City Solicitor Michael Bissonette said the ordinance remains problematic for investors and developers. When the regulation went to the council for final approval in May 2021, the legal draft contained an error that included the phrase "zero buffer." He advised the council to offer a motion under Robert's Rules to rescind and correct the language of the ordinance. That's this week's Massachusetts Cannabis Report. For Weed Talk News, I'm Ron Marshallsea.
Bay State Cannabis Report is supported by Holyoke Cannabis, Holyoke's finest cannabis recreational experience.
After a thriving 2021, Ayer Wellness now has its sights set on New York State. The company's CEO says they're eyeing the acquisition of Cultivana, the owner of the cannabis-infused seltzer brand Levia. The drinks are only sold in Massachusetts right now, but Ayer wants to expand its reach into more states. With more from the weed world of business, Deborah Borchardt has this week's Green Market Report.
This is the business update for Weed Talk News from the Green Market Report. It was a shortened trading week with markets closed on Monday for the Martin Luther King holiday. This week, AgriFi reported that its fourth quarter 2021 new bookings exceeded $250 million, and the company reaffirmed its fourth quarter 2021 revenue guidance of $26 million to $28 million. Now, you may recall the company recently faced a short seller attack that accused them of working with unlicensed companies, but AgriFi says it is servicing early stage cultivators. MariMed signed an agreement to buy Green Growth Group. They are the holder of a provisional cannabis craft license in Illinois. MariMed will get a building that can develop up to 14,000 square feet of canopy for cultivation. The price for this acquisition was not disclosed. And Cresco Labs announced the termination of their previously announced agreement to buy Beurer Wellness, which is a Baltimore, Maryland medical dispensary. The CEO of Cresco said, "We have terminated the purchase agreement with Beurer Wellness due to the failure of certain closing conditions to be met prior to our specified termination date." So that is that. And I am Deborah Borchardt, and this has been your business update for Weed Talk News.
On the global scale, weed continues to flourish. Officials in Thailand are looking to further loosen regulations on the plant. The Public Health Ministry's FDA has proposed that cannabis be completely dropped from the official list of prohibited narcotics. The proposal will be presented to Thailand's Narcotics Control Board, and if they agree, the public health minister just needs to sign it into effect. With more from the wide world of weed, here's Stephen Arthur George with this week's European Report.
I'm Stephen Arthur George with Kaya Advisors from Lisbon, Portugal. This is the European Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. European cultivators still not meeting the Israeli medical cannabis demand. Back in November of last year, IM Cannabis Corporation reported they were sending roughly 400 kilograms of dried flower to Israel. Just recently, the import was reported to be successful, and they said the product would be entering the market this quarter. What this means is European cultivators are still struggling to meet the quality demands of the Israeli market, leaving an opportunity for cultivators globally and also in Canada. Also in Israel, Canonic sees promise in preclinical trials. As the European medical cannabis market grows, Israeli producers and manufacturers have had their eye on that growth. Recently, Canonic reported that they had some promise with some cultivars, both with treating inflammation as well as pain. After launching this product line in Israel, they look to then enter the European market with these solutions as well. Back here in Europe, cannabis use rose throughout the pandemic, similar to many other countries. Cyprus just reported on a recent survey that showed that consumption has increased throughout the pandemic. This is consistent with the rest of Europe as well, and also many other countries around the world. This same increase in consumption here in Europe also increased some of the conversations throughout Europe Parliament as well when it comes to adult use cannabis regulations here in Europe. That's the European Cannabis Report. I'm Stephen Arthur George with Kaya Advisors reporting for Weed Talk News.
Missouri is getting its first Black-owned dispensary. Since the state legalized cannabis for medical use, nearly 200 dispensaries have opened their doors, none of which are owned by people of color, until now. Adrienne Scales-Williams, owner of Luxury Leaf Dispensary, plans to open her shop in the Grove neighborhood of St. Louis this week, bringing some much-needed and well-deserved representation to Missouri's industry. With more from the Show Me State, Brandon Jones has this week's Missouri Report.
Hey, thanks, Elena. That's right. We're very excited to finally have our first minority-owned cannabis industry or cannabis dispensary here in Missouri. Very excited for Adrienne. I was a part of a Minorities for Medical Marijuana event just a few weeks ago, and they're actually hiring a lot of minorities for the dispensaries here. It's put on by Jason Mitchell and a couple other of the crew here in the Kansas City area, trying to get the minorities, not only, obviously we want them to own dispensaries, but to get them jobs in the industry as well. My first story today comes from Marijuana Moment. A federal probe into Missouri medical marijuana licensing may be ongoing. We just found out this last week there was a document released showing that they were still doing what they call interviews with people in the industry. So a person that was just donating or supplying money, investing in a cannabis industry here, was given through a full interview, asked all about what he was doing, and during the interview they brought up the Independence mayor, the Missouri lobbyist Steve Tilley, and former Missouri House Speaker John Deal were all brought up in the interview. So we still know that the federal FBI and stuff are still investigating here in Missouri. And also another big thing, my other story today is delivery is really taking off here in Missouri. Another service that people are taking advantage of, especially with the cold weather. I know here it was only 5 degrees here in Kansas City yesterday. So a lot of people are taking advantage of that delivery services here. So once again, I'm Brandon Jones with Distribution Maven with the Weed Talk News report from Missouri. Thanks again. Everybody have a great week.
The Golden State's cannabis market getting a bit clouded with illicit activity. And now officials in Los Angeles County are cracking down even more. Authorities there just signed off on a plan to issue fines up to $30,000 per day against unlicensed commercial cannabis activity. That includes grows, storefronts, and any other business found to be in violation. For a closer look at what's happening in California this week, here's Christopher Smyth.
Hey, thanks for the intro. Here's the third California Roundup for 2022 from Weed Talk News. It's National CBD Month, says the Californian, and if you ingest the versatile cannabinoid, I hope it serves you as well as it serves me and millions of other calm, healthy, well-rested, intelligent people around the world. MJ Biz Daily says that 2022 is going to bring new markets and new opportunities for California cannabis firms. More than a dozen California cities are opening new recreational cannabis licensing opportunities this year, either by allowing the legal industry for the first time or by increasing the number of available business permits. And one such new market is Napa Valley, which has approved a new ordinance to allow adult use this week. Medical dispensaries are currently allowed in Napa, but they're barely breaking even. How come? Because they've found out what industry insiders have known all along. When you don't allow legal dispensaries, illegal dealers will happily provide. And anyone that says that legal dispensaries attract crime or sell to kids is totally full of misinformation. Meanwhile, the California market will try to absorb the tasty offerings of a Massachusetts-based company. Active Health Foods has a letter of intent for a joint venture with cultivation manufacturing and retail company, Hubcraft. The proposed joint venture will bring East Coast brands to the California cannabis market. Talk about bringing a sandwich to a smorgasbord. Guess who's coming to dinner? Freeway Cannabis by Rick Ross, bringing Freeway Wick back home. Peyton's Place by Gary Payton, a great player, even though he played for Seattle. And Truth 34 brand via Paul Pierce. You better wear your Clippers jersey out here, pal. And Whoopi Goldberg's Emma and Clyde products. Well, welcome to California and good luck. And I'm Christopher Smyth, publisher of the American Cannabis Report, sending peace, Paul Pierce, and Pakalolo from California for Weed Talk News.
A decade into the adult use market, Washington State is now looking at restructuring the way it handles weed. One current bill is pushing to revamp the makeup of the Liquor and Cannabis Board. The bill would make the board more like the state's gaming commission and add additional board members to, quote, help expand their capacity to tackle the really complex issues facing the legal market today in Washington, unquote. Some advocates have criticized the board of being too heavy-handed in enforcement. So we'll see what kind of change this brings. And with more from Washington State, let's check in now with Josh Kincaid.
I'm Josh Kincaid from the Talking Hedge with the Washington State Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. D8 and synthesized cannabinoids appear to be among the top concerns for Washington State's Liquor and Cannabis Board, according to the Cannabis Observer. The explosion in hemp growth following the passage of the Farm Bill has led to a sale of Delta-8 products in some states that hadn't permitted the cannabis sale. In an effort by state regulators to rein in the sale of intoxicating cannabis that can be produced with materials outside their authority, the Washington Liquor and Cannabis Board has requested a change in the law to prohibit the sale of Delta-8. Some existing producers in the state argue that the ban is necessary to avoid an existential crisis for their businesses as hemp producers can provide raw materials to turn into intoxicants for pennies on the dollar compared to the legal cannabis producers that must adhere to a costly set of regulations from the state. Major cannabis industries, trade organizations like the Cannabis Alliance have offered their own plan for rebuttal to the Liquor and Cannabis Board, saying that the state will stifle future growth in an industry that produces tens of millions of dollars in excise tax revenue each month. Next week, you're going to find out about Washington State's arrest protection bill. But with that, we're going to have to roll up this Washington State Cannabis Report. I'm Josh Kincaid from the Talking Heads reporting for Weed Talk News. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out.
The legal marijuana marketplace in Michigan continues to bloom. More sales numbers solidifying what we reported last week, that sales only continue to skyrocket in the Great Lakes state. And even better, the price for consumers is only dropping. When the market launched, a pound of cannabis was worth just over $8,000. But last month, that number sank to just below $3,000, driven by an increasing supply in the market. With more, here's Michigan NORML Executive Director Rick Thompson.
Hello again. This is the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson for Weed Talk News. Let's begin. Kalamazoo Valley Community College is adding a new cannabis workforce certification program to their curriculum. The courses are set for a February 15th launch date, and they cover 3 topic areas: cultivation technicians, provisioning center associates, and advanced manufacturing agents. Now, the certification programs are online only. They take about 8 weeks and are not credit hour courses, meaning they do not contribute toward any degree field. The program is open to anyone, and each 8-week certification program costs about $900. The sign-up link will become active by February 15th, according to MLive. Now, in a follow-up to their nationally recognized Pot for Shots program, the Greenhouse of Walled Lake has launched their Pot for Plasma drive. This effort comes in conjunction with the guys and gals at You Baked Cannabis, which is a Genesee County cultivator and Medibles creator. The Red Cross tells us that the supply of blood is lower than usual, so these 2 companies have teamed up to offer a free pre-rolled joint to anyone who shows proof they donated blood. The special offer began earlier this week and runs through February 27th. Now, what kind of proof is needed, you might ask? A sticker on your arm or a Band-Aid in the right place will do, according to the press release issued by the 2 companies. Remember, Jerry Millen and the Greenhouse gave away 30,000 pre-rolled joints in their Pot for Shots campaign, which launched about 1 year ago. To claim your smokable prize, visit the Greenhouse in Walled Lake during normal business hours. A particular sign in the Upper Peninsula community of Houghton had been up for 30 years with no problems, so a cannabis retailer called the Fire Station decided it was probably safe to rent it. The cannabis ad went up, and almost like anti-magic, the sign was suddenly out of compliance with the height requirement, and the stanchion it sits on was never approved before it was used. You know how that goes. City officials suddenly had lots of questions to ask about the 30-year-old sign. They behaved so prejudicially, the fire station sued the city. The city responded by threatening to pull the retailer's license to operate, which was incentive enough for the fire station to take down the sign while legal wranglings are being wrangled. Now, we have a couple of quick hits here. A Canadian company called Red, White, and Bloom opened shop on a 15,000 square foot cultivation facility in Warren. The 10% jump in cannabis sales Michigan experienced in December has many experts excited about 2022's market potential. Lemonade Farms dropped a line of cannabis products packaged in milk cartons in an effort to pay homage to the cannabis OGs of the unregulated market days. And that's it for the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News.
Now here's something I think we all know. A new review of cannabis studies suggests that the long-lasting impacts of smoking weed could impact our ability to think and plan. Big surprise. No. The study highlighted several areas of cognition impaired by cannabis use. including problems concentrating and difficulties remembering and learning. I mean, I think we can all agree getting stoned tends to have that effect. But in another study in Spain, researchers say cannabis users have better sex. The study found, quote, sexual function is improved in young people who are high-risk cannabis consumers with a moderate risk of adult use, resulting in increased desire, arousal, and orgasm. And hey, whatever you're looking to get out of your cannabis use, I think this goes to show that we need to keep researching this plant and all the complexities it has to offer. And with that, remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there, so use it wisely and responsibly. I'm Elena Pinto for Weed Talk News and Pro Cannabis Media. See you next week.
Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
Difference is building a solution for that individual. Not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the costs low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Pro Cannabis Media programming is available live and on demand on our Facebook page at Pro Canna Media, on Instagram at Pro Cannabis Media, on LinkedIn also at Pro Cannabis Media, on YouTube and YouTube Live on Pro Cannabis Media, Twitter at Pro Canna Media, and on twitch.tv/Pro Cannabis Media. So like, share, and subscribe to all of our content, newsletters, and shows live or on demand